7:01. Welcome to Millbrae City Council on October 12th, 2021. And if you could please do roll call.
Okay. Councilmember Halliburton.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Fung.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Pappen.
Here.
Vice Mayor Leba.
Here.
Mayor Snyder.
Here.
All council members are present.
Excellent. Thank you. And if everyone could please join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tonight, we have no ceremonial actions or presentations, so we're going to go straight into the city manager's agenda overview and staff briefing.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening to you, members of the City Council and the Millbrae community. My name is Tom Williams, City Manager. So in terms of the agenda this evening, we do have this agenda overview that includes our calendar of events, reports of bills and claims, and report out of the October 12th, 2021 closed session. Item number 3 is approval of the meeting minutes for the special meeting of September 15th, 2021, which was earlier this evening. We have no oral reports from any city committee or commission chairs this evening. Then we move into public communication. This is the part on the agenda that any member of the public can address the city council on any item not on the agenda. Each public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. Then we move to the consent calendar. We have 3 items on consent calendar this evening, starting with item number 5. Item number 5 is to consider approval of a motion for the quarterly investment schedule for the 4th quarter of the fiscal year 2020-2021. Item number 6 is to consider cancellation of the regularly scheduled city council meeting of November 23rd, 2021 and December 28th, 2021. Mayor, we may want to remove this from the agenda. I've received several inquiries that there is an error, and I did check into this, that the city does not traditionally cancel the November, the second meeting in November. So we may want to pull that to discuss it.
Pull from consent.
Yeah. Item number 7 is to consider adoption of a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of the Second Amendment to the restatement of the Joint Powers Agreement, establishing the Peninsula Traffic Congestion Relief Fund or Relief Alliance, known as commute.org. And this resolution is basically agreeing to allow Menlo Park, Portola Valley, and the town of Woodside to join commute.org. There are no public hearings this evening. There's no existing business. So we move to new business. We have several items on new business, starting with number 8, which is to consider a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment with the county of San Mateo to provide additional police services, or to provide police services for their contract of $6,594,172, with the option to increase that amount by an additional $150,000 for a supplemental downtown foot patrol or bike patrol officer for the fiscal year starting July 1st through the June 30th, 2022 fiscal year. Item number 9 is to consider waiving the first reading and introducing an ordinance amending Title II, Chapter 2.20, Sections 2.20.050 and 2.20.060 of the Millbrae Municipal Code related to purchasing of supplies, non-professional services, and equipment for our public works projects. Item number 10 is to consider a resolution adopting a mitigated negative declaration and adopting the active transportation plan. And item number 11 is to consider a resolution of intent to comply with the California Voters' Rights Act. And then we move into council comments and adjournment. Mayor, we did receive a request from a member of the public to move item number 11 in front of item number 8. So that would be the first item on the new business calendar.
Very good.
Okay, so a quick briefing of the city council. We have a lot of events that are coming up. Starting tomorrow, there is in association with the City of Millbrae, Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center, Mills High School, and the Millbrae Anti-Racist Coalition, There'll be a presentation of the building belonging workshop that was held on October 13th. The event will be a report from that student-led meeting and student-centered discussion on inclusion and equity. So again, that is tomorrow night, October 13th. Elaine, our city clerk, do you know what time that starts? You're on mute.
Sorry. Tomorrow night's workshop start at 6:30.
So 6:30 tomorrow night. Then we have an outdoor book sale. The Friends of the Millbrae Library will be hosting an outdoor book sale and media sale on Saturday. That's this Saturday, October 16th, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Out in front of the library. All children's books will be 25 cents each. All other books will be 50 cents each. So please come by to support the Friends of the Millbrae Library on their book sale. Then we have the 23rd annual Millbrae Rotary Kids Carnival. That will be held on Sunday, October 17th. Also this coming weekend, this coming Sunday, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Rotary Park. That's corner of Millbrae Avenue and South Ashton Street. It's a free community event for all children. There's games, there's entertainment, there's snacks, cotton candy, that type of thing. And attendees are definitely encouraged to wear their favorite Halloween costume. I will say face masks are recommended, even though this is an outdoor event. And for more information, people can contact the number at 650-588-5400. We also have our concert series, Beats and Brews, which is the third Thursday of every month. This is actually the last one in the series for this season. That is Thursday, October 21st. So a week from this Thursday, we are going to have since it's October, an Oktoberfest a theme with live music from a German band called Alpine Sound. So everybody come out and enjoy the concert on Broadway, October 21st, starting at 5 p.m. It goes from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then we also have the Millbrae Night Out at the Movies. The community voted on the Addams Family movie to be shown. This is on Friday, October 29th. The event will be held as an outdoor drive-in theater in the parking lot across from City Hall here off of Library Lane. Registration will be open at noon on this Friday, October 15th at www.bit.ly/millrec. So that's www.bit.ly/MILREC. Registration is required. It's a first come, first serve. This is a very popular event, and we have been selling out when we have this drive-in event. So, Mayor, that concludes a very brief city manager's update, and we can move forward with the agenda.
Excellent. Thank you, City Manager. Next up is a report out on the October 12th, 2021 closed session. I'm not sure who would be doing the report out.
Maybe special counsel. I assume there were no reportable actions, but
that's right. This is Alan Festermacher from Rutan and Tucker. No reportable action.
Thank you. So moving on to next up is agenda item number 3, approval of minutes. If there are no changes from City Council or nothing given to the city clerk prior, if I could have a motion and a second.
Pappen, move approval.
Second, Oliva.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pappen and Vice Mayor Oliva. Oh, go ahead. Was that Councilman Holliber?
That was Councilmember Fung.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It came in garbled. Councilman Fung, did you have a comment or were you seconding?
I was going to second that motion, but
I'm sorry.
I think the Vice Mayor got there first, but that's okay.
Yep, the ladies were quick tonight. Any discussion? City Clerk, if you could call the vote, please.
Councilmember Holliber.
Aye.
Councilmember Fung.
Aye.
Councilmember Pappen.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Oliva.
Aye.
Mayor Snyder.
Aye.
The special meeting minutes of September 15, 2021 is is approved by the vote of 5-0.
Okay, and as the city manager said, thank you, City Clerk. We have no oral reports from the chairs of our commissions or committees. They will be coming up in future agendas, though. So next up are public comments for items not on tonight's agenda, and that includes consent items. And City Clerk, would you like to explain how the public can get our attention?
Of course. If you would like to make any public comments, please raise your hand by pressing the raise your hand feature on the bottom of the screen, or you could press *9 on your phone.
And I don't see any hands raised. I don't know if you've got anyone on the phone.
There is, but they're not raising their hand.
Okay. All right. So closing public comment for items not on the agenda, moving to consent calendar. And as the city manager recommended, pulling consent item number 6 for discussion. So any other consent items to be pulled? I'm not hearing anything, no comments from the public. If we could get a motion to approve agenda item 5, hold on, switching, agenda item 5. Sorry, Elaine, I've got to switch screens.
5 and 7.
5 and 7, do I need to read them? If you can read
Move
them.
approval.
Councilman Hulliber, motion to approve.
Second,
Second by Councilman Fung.
second by Fung.
Any discussion? All right, City Clerk, could you please call the vote?
Councilmember Hulliver,
Aye.
Councilmember Fung.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Pappen,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Oliva,
Aye.
Mayor Snyder.
Aye.
Consent item number 5 and 7 passed by a vote of 5-0.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 6, which is the cancellation of regularly scheduled council meetings for November 23rd, which is 2 days before Thanksgiving, and December 28th. City Manager, do you want to give a couple of comments? I myself would have pulled this item because I'm not sure we can afford taking the night off before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor, and again, Council. So a little bit of confusion on this. I think the staff report stated that traditionally the City Council cancels this meeting, the Tuesday meeting before the Thursday Thanksgiving holiday. And looking at the record and the history of the city, that actually is not true. It's only been maybe the last year or so that has happened, but traditionally this meeting is not canceled. And so I wanted to bring that to the City Council's attention and just let everyone know that that it traditionally is not canceled, and typically the city does have the meeting on that Tuesday night. We do have a significant amount of business to conduct, so no problem. It's really at the desire of the City Council. If you want to have the meeting or not.
Thank you, City Manager. I did go and look at the calendar, and if we did cancel the 23rd, we could go on the 30th, but we already have a special joint meeting that night. With the general plan, the specific plan, and so many other special meetings lately, I think we should have the meeting. But Council, where are you? I do remember, this will be my 6th November, that we have talked about canceling it, but have never canceled that close to Thanksgiving meeting. But if Council feels strongly.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Pappen.
just for the record, the only established policy we have is canceling meetings on election days. So we established that way back when. That's the only established policy we have as far as canceling meetings.
Thank you, and good to know. So I'm not seeing any other raised. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Hulliber.
Yeah, I would agree with the mayor on this. I think recall maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, it was requested to cancel the second meeting in November, and it's sort of come up each year, but I think it's maybe canceled once, maybe twice. So given the amount of business that we have, I would recommend keeping that on the agenda unless for some reason it clears up between now and then. But I'd rather not have more meetings that are going to 11 p.m. each time because other meetings are canceled.
Thank you. It also backs up all of the proclamations and commendations. That's why the first September meeting was so heavy with that, because we couldn't do anything in August. So thank you, Councilman Holber. Any other comments from council? And since this was removed from consent calendar, any comments from the public, opening it up for public comment? And I'm just going to give it a couple of seconds to see if a hand's raised. I do not see any hands raised. City Clerk, anyone signaling you?
No.
Okay, closing public comment. If in that case, the motion would be to cancel the December 28th meeting, but move forward with the November 23rd. If I could have a motion and second.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Councilman Fung.
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Holber. Any further discussion? City Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilmember Holliver,
Aye.
Councilmember Fung,
Aye.
Councilmember Pappen,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Oliva,
Aye.
Mayor Snyder.
Aye.
The motion to cancel the regularly scheduled city council meeting of December 28, 2021 passed by the vote of 5-0.
Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Council. Okay, moving back to my agenda. We do not have a public hearing tonight, and we have no existing business. We are moving straight into new business. And in this case, we are moving agenda item number 11 to the front of the agenda, the next issue. So City Manager, I believe you've got a presentation for us and the public.
Yes, again, thank you, Mayor. Tom Williams, City Manager. So this item is to consider a resolution of intent to comply with the California Voters' Rights Act. I just make a few opening comments here. As I understand it, the City Council has received numerous inquiries regarding this threatened lawsuit because the city has at-large elections where everyone that's a registered voter within the city votes for all council members, versus separate districts where a council member has to live in that district and only people in that district could vote for that particular council candidate or council person. And so we received a letter, and we'll go into more detail here in a second, that claims that we're in violation because we have at-large elections and we don't have district elections. I know that, again, you've received many inquiries. You haven't been able to communicate back to your constituency because all of these meetings have been in closed session under the threat of litigation. But tonight we do have a public meeting that we hope to inform the public of this very complex issue that's been confronted. The city of Millbrae, kind of this very aggressive position of this particular attorney that's made a cottage industry out of this, going up and down the state of California, challenging and litigating municipalities and school districts and other special districts. But with that, we've retained the law firm of Rutan and Tucker, and specifically the attorney Alan Finstermacher, who's with us this evening. He specializes in election law. He's very much a specialist in the California Voters' Rights Act, has helped many cities in the state of California through this process. And so I'd like to introduce Mr. Finstermacher to make some comments and provide a little bit more background on context on what the issue is and what the city's facing here.
Thank you, City Manager. Please go ahead, Mr. Finstermacher.
Sorry about that, Mayor.
No
yes,
problem.
hi, everybody, council. My name is Alan Finstermacher, as Tom just stated, and I have represented many cities throughout the state when faced with similar letters that allege violations of the Cbra. So unfortunately, the city's position is not unique. It's with the latest in the line of many cities, dozens to probably over 100 in the city, in the state rather, over the last decade that have received Cbra demand letters from certain plaintiffs that make these allegations. And I want to be very clear that we're not here tonight considering this resolution of intention because there's any evidence of wrongdoing or that the city elections don't properly represent protected classes and minorities. We're here for two main reasons, and those reasons are the bar for liability under the Cbra is extremely low and intentionally low, as drafted as such. And the other reason is if you lose as a city, you have to pay the plaintiff's attorney's fees. And those two things combined create an extreme risk for any city to fight a CBRA action. And in fact, every city that has litigated a CBRA case to conclusion has either ultimately lost in the trial court and court of appeal or settled during the process and has paid hundreds of thousands to many millions of dollars in attorney's fees, both to their plaintiffs and then, of course, their own attorneys on top of those $1 million awards, and had to convert to district elections anyway. And when losing those cases, the city loses control often of the process and has court imposed district maps. So the list of examples is long and easy to find, and I won't list all those, but it's suffice it to say there are many failed attempts to fight against these kind of demand letters, and the trend has been for cities to voluntarily convert rather than risk taxpayer money when facing these long odds, regardless of the facts on the ground and regardless of whether or not the city believes this is the right thing to do. So in front of you today, before I kick it over to the city clerk for the detailed presentation, is a resolution of intention to convert to district elections. And what this resolution does is provides a 90-day safe harbor from the city for any filing of any lawsuit for the city to potentially hold 5 required public hearings to consider draft maps and conversion to district elections and adopting a map. So this resolution is in effect the first step of the process that can be potentially stopped. But again, it is the first step of the process to conversion to district elections, and it does protect the city for at least 90 days from the filing of a lawsuit. So with that, I'll turn it over to the city clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and share screen. Just be a moment, please. Okay. Can everyone see the slide?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. For your consideration, this is a presentation of the resolution of intent to transition from at-large to by-district election pursuant to the California Voting Rights Act, which is also known as the CBRA. On November 27th, the city received a letter from Yo-Yo Soy claiming the city's at-large election violated the CBRA. However, Mr. Soy's letter did not contain all of the required elements to constitute as a valid claim under the CBRA. On March 5th, the city received a letter note from a known CBRA litigation attorney, Kevin Shankman, who have made claim against many California cities and other governmental agencies. The letter states that I write on behalf of our client, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, and its members residing within the city of Millbrae, as well as Yo-Yo Soy. Millbrae relies upon at-large election system for electing candidates to its governing board. Moreover, voting within the city is racially polarized, resulting in a minority vote dilution, and therefore the city's at-large election violate the California's Voting Rights Act of 2001. Mr. Shankman threatened litigation unless the city voluntarily convert to by district-based elections.
Hey, Elaine, I hate to interrupt you. The slides aren't moving, just FYI.
Thank you. Okay. Under CBRA, go back since it's not moving. Can you see the litigation one?
No, you're still on the slide that says the letter states,
Oh.
the background slide.
Eduardo, is it still not moving?
There we go.
Okay, there it is.
You're good to go, city clerk.
Okay, sorry. Mr. Shankman threatened litigation unless the city voluntarily convert to district-based election. He asserted the city's at-large election dilutes the ability of certain ethnicity, especially Latinos and Asians, both protected classes, to elect candidates of their choice or otherwise influence the outcome of the city council's election. No proof was provided to back up his claim. Although the city is fully integrated community, the CBRA does not provide any assumption for small communities like us. Under CBRA, a number of procedural safeguards and burdens of proof requirements under the Federal Voting Rights Act are removed, making it easy for plaintiffs to prevail in lawsuit against cities. Therefore, the bar for finding the city liable for violation of the CBRA is extremely low and does not mean that the city has done anything wrong. Prevailing plaintiffs have the right to recover attorney and expert witness fees. However, for a city to recover its costs should the city prevail, the city must prove the claim was frivolous. The city must adopt the resolution of intent by October 15, 2021 to cap the attorney and expert fees exposure to a maximum of $30,000 pursuant to the CBRA. Not moving forward with a resolution of intent could expose the city to millions in plaintiff costs. Examples of reported payouts are on the upcoming slide. The CBRA, as it is now, is heavily slated in favor of the plaintiffs. Even though the city of the Millbrae believes no vote dilution occurs in the city election, for the city to litigate such lawsuit poses a significant risk. Other cities and local government agencies that have opposed CBRA challenges in court have either voluntarily adopted district elections or were forced by the court to convert and pay millions of taxpayer funds in attorney fees and expert fees. To date, there's no public agency that have successfully defended itself against a CBRA litigation. The city of Santa Monica case is still pending in the state Supreme Court. As you can see, the following cities that challenged the CBRA have reported the following amount paid to the plaintiff's attorney fees, not including the city's cost of defending itself. City of Anaheim is 1.1 million, City of Palmdale 4.5 million, City of Modesto 3 million, City of Santa Clara 4.5 million.
City Clerk, I don't think the slide progressed.
Yeah, Eduardo, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go ahead and have someone else show this slide if you don't mind, because it's moving on my screen, but it's for some reason not moving on yours.
Great plan.
Thank you.
Eduardo? It's still on the California Voting Rights Act, parentheses CVRA.
I'm gonna have to, Eduardo, I'm gonna have to relog, okay?
Okay. You don't have mic. Can you guys see this?
Not yet, Eduardo. We're just seeing the Millbrae symbol. There we go. It is now up, but it's you're not on full screen. There we go. But you're at background. Keep going. There we go. Oh, back. If you're going to show the dollar amounts, I think. Elaine, there we go. Negative consequences to cities. Do you want to keep it on that slide or go up one? Go forward one.
Elaine, is this slide okay?
And for the public, they can now see the cost of litigation to these other cities.
I apologize, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I was having technical difficulties.
It's okay. We've always had you in the background taking care of us. No worries.
Okay. And it also should be noted that when the city of Pacific converted to by district election, there were no minorities elected to city council. Another city who had 3 minority council member elected by at large election ended up with only 1 council member of minority descent after implementation of the by district election. The process from a at-large to district-based election as required by CBRA are as follows. Eduardo, can you go next slide, please? Thank you. The City Council adopt the resolution of intent, which starts the 90-day safe harbor period. As a general law city, the city have the option to A, divide into 5 separate districts with a rotating mayor, or B, divide into 4 separate districts with a at-large elected mayor. Each council member must reside within the district and be chosen only by the electors residing in that particular district. The city must retain a demographer to determine the possible district boundary based on census data and ethnicity. The city is required to hold at least 5 public hearings within the 90-day safe harbor period to solicit public input and establish the city's district-based election. If the resolution is adopted tonight, the safe harbor period will end on January 10th, 2022. Next slide, please. Okay. Here's a breakdown on a series of public hearings that will give the community the opportunity to provide input. The first and second public hearing is on the composition of the district before any maps are drawn. Third and fourth public hearing is on the content of the draft map and the proposed sequence of elections. The map will be available for public review at least 7 days before the public hearings. Fifth and final public hearing will be for the City Council to consider an ordinance that establishes the city's district-based elections. As mentioned in the previous slide, the safe harbor period ends on January 10th, 2022. To complete this process to convert to by-district election. The city is required to submit the district boundaries to the San Mateo County Elections Office no later than May 12, 2022, in time for the 2022 election cycle. Staff is recommending, next slide, please. Staff is recommending the City Council adopt a resolution declaring the city's intent to transition from at-large election system to a district-based election system, and direct staff to proceed with the required public meetings to create council district. Staff and legal counsel are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. Hold on, I've got to get my screen. I know that there's at least one member of the public. City Council, comments, questions for staff and Mr. Fenstermeister? Macher. No questions, Council?
I think we should wait till after public comment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I agree.
I'm just checking. Thank you, Mr. Holober.
I
Okay.
agree as well.
Okay, if there are no comments then from council at this time, opening it up for public comment. As the city clerk explained earlier, please raise your hand by using the bottom of the screen, or if you're on the phone to *9 and let the city clerk know that you have a question. And the first person I saw before my screen changed was former Councilman Wayne Lee. Go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm on the road, so I hope my signal comes in. But dear Mayor Snyder and members of the Millbrae City Council, I understand letters from Mr. Yo-Yo Chu and Mr. Kevin Shankman sent threatening letters of lawsuits unless the city adopts district elections. Mr. Shankman specifically mentioned Mr. Zhu's letter to emphasize the issue. If the intent to ensure all voters are represented on the council, I would like to point out that districting would disenfranchise one or more portions of the city. Each district would be represented by one council member living in that district. That may seem attractive to the members of that district, the voting members of that district, but people forget that a vote of the majority, 3 members of the council is required to pass an ordinance, spending, budgets, and other important matters. That means if one member representing that district cannot get consensus or agreement with at least 2 other members, then the people of that district will have little or no influence on city politics as a whole. Each council member is beholden to the voters of their district and may begin to lose interest on other districts in the city. People of a district will have little leverage upon other council members of other voting districts. There is and has been cases whereby a rogue council member, more interested in personal vendetta than what's good for the citizens of the city, has been the 1 vote against 4 votes. Such representation is a travesty for that voting district that council member represents and leaves that district with no influence on the city as a whole. Lastly, all parts of Millbrae are diverse. There are no pockets of Latinos, African Americans, or Asian neighborhoods. Racial equality would be best served as it is. The city council has a heavy decision tonight, spending many millions of dollars or more fighting the lawsuit or safeguard all Millbrae voters' right to be represented by 5 council members and not just 1. I thank you for your service. Respectfully, Wayne Lee. Thank you.
Thank you, former Mayor Lee. Next up, I see Alice Kwong.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak up. I totally agree with what Wayne Lee say. And as I know, I'm living here for over 20 years. I see Craig, Mr. Craig is also, Dan Craig is all here. I see Janet Fogus is here. We see like Annie, Gina, even our mayor have been in service our community for a long time as a mayor or council, former mayor. How much you have been, when you have been in the position and thinking only a little area for the resident of Millbrae, you are thinking about the whole Millbrae, right? Because our city is very small. So if you divorce our city into 5 or 4 districts, what's that mean? Even I cannot talk to Gina, I cannot talk to even Ann Snyder, or I only can talk to Yo-Yo in the future. That's not fair. I would say, who's the benefit? I would say this time, I don't mind to open talk. Like Yo-Yo is the only beneficiary for win the game. I would say it's the game. These gentlemen have been trying to be a council for our city for years, right? But he wasn't successful. So he's trying to get a tricky medal to successfully be a council. Maybe he thought in that area, what he has been living, no one challenging want to be a leader for the community. But who can be a leader for the community? The leader should have a big ability, understand our community's need. It's not because where you live, it's because you present the community. You have a heart for the community. You have ability to leading our city in the good direction. It's not because the political right. I hope our community in the future still intact, not divided by such like Yo-Yo. Like if he's been a good leader, he should be in the years ago, not until to challenge our city and give him position. That's not bright guide. His attitude is wrong. And we're leading our community the wrong directions. And we will pay a big price for this gentleman if he get elected by cheating our city to get into those difficult positions. I hope all our city council, all the current people attending this meeting and be knowing what our city is facing. It's such a suffering for one gentleman's personal needs. He's very selfish. How much does he do for our community? What's his vision? Why our community doesn't require or even a college graduate? What the qualification of the individual? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kwong. Former Mayor Janet Fogarty.
Thank you, Mayor Schneider. I would just like to suggest that if you really want to hear what the community feels about this, that it might be an opportunity for some outreach, becoming speakers at, say, Rotary, the Lions Club, and other organizations here in town, to let people who really care about the community know what's going on with this. And they might have some ideas for how to make this as fair as possible. Having read the staff report and listened to your special counsel, it seems the city council has no choice but to do this. But how it's implemented, the city council does have authority. And since you have to have 5 public meetings, perhaps some of these public meetings could involve some of our groups in town, the Millbrae Culture Committee, for instance, the Sister City Committee, all of the folks who really care about the community enough to get involved, make sure that they have an opportunity to speak up. So I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fogarty. Mr. Chen, Joe Chen.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to let me speak. There are around 13,000 voters in Millbrae, and the actual voters turnout is even lower. It will be difficult to fairly contribute those voters into 5 equal districts. Furthermore, some districts might have significantly less voters. It is unfair to elect a candidate winning less votes in one district than a candidate winning more votes in another district. In my opinion, district election also causes this negative impact to our city. Number one, district elections will lead to aligning decisions to benefit only a small area of the city instead of all the residents in the city of Millbrae. Number two, district elections, if there are 2 very qualified candidates from one district, can we really afford not to elect the second candidate if the city residents feel that person is better qualified than one candidate, possibly running unopposed in another district? Number three, Millbrae has historically had a tough time coming up with qualified candidates for city council. District election will discourage qualified residents running for city council because qualified residents are not necessarily live in the 5 districts evenly. In closing, I think district election is not good for a small city like Millbrae. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. Jean Wong.
Good evening, Mayor Schneider and council members. I believe district elections will ensure that Millbrae's city council would fairly represent all the neighborhoods of Millbrae. District elections have encouraged and new and qualified candidates to run for office in many cities. Candidates who in the past may have been discouraged or prevented from running for office due to the high cost of campaigning and lack of name recognition. One benefit of district elections is that it would curb the amount of funding a candidate would need to run an honest and grassroots campaign. We saw extraordinary campaign spending in the November 2020 elections, amounts that were unusually high for a city the size of Millbrae. District elections will help bring campaign spending down to a more realistic level. Cities that have moved to district elections actually saw an increase in voter engagement and increased voter participation. City members elected by their districts have demonstrated a deeper understanding of their district's needs and priorities than council members elected at large. I believe that moving to district elections is the right thing for Millbrae to do. By doing so, it would join neighboring cities such as San Bruno, San Mateo, Foster City, and Burlingame, who have or will be in the process of moving to district elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Margaret Ning.
Honorable Mayor and council member, can you guys hear me okay?
You're coming in great.
Thank you. I understand we have to move to district election due to the state law, along with the fact that our city is being threatened for a lawsuit because one of the former council candidates didn't get elected. So we are forced to go into district election. Despite the above, I personally don't support district election because I like to be represented by all 5 council members. I don't just want to be represented by one councilman. And if we have no choice but to go into district election, how is it going to impact me or other Millbrae residents? Obviously, district election will cost a city a tremendous amount of financial burden, which the city is already facing. Now, who is going to pay for the cost of redistrict? And is the resident going to pay for it? If so, how much additional burden or additional payment will it bring that each one of us will need to pay additional? And looks like district election, in my view, really benefit nobody, but only one person, the one who threatened to sue the city. Now, of all the comments that I heard tonight, I really like the idea from former Mayor Janet Fogarty. Ms. Fogarty commented that the city should have a community outreach to those who really care about our city. the information shared from City Clerk tonight is phenomenal. I think if we were gonna make any change, we definitely have to do a citywide outreach so that everybody knows what's going on and how is this gonna impact that down the road. So these are my comments. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Ning. I don't see any other hands raised to the public. If anyone else wants to comment, please try to raise your hand. If you're on the phone, *9.
Mayor, I did get a request from former Mayor Marge Petro that she wants to make a comment, but I'm not sure if she's here tonight.
Okay, let me check. Do we know if she might be on the phone?
There's
former Mayor Colapietro, if you are here, we would love to have you speak. I don't see you on the list.
Yeah.
Did she by any chance send an email that we can read?
No. Can you
Oh,
hear
there
me?
she is. I hear you.
Can you hear me in there?
Yes, you're coming in perfect.
Okay. Don't start my minutes yet because I have to turn around in my chair. Good evening. I want to begin by saying this action should not be inclusive of any of the Millbrae school districts. Additionally, we need not look at what other communities are doing when they receive a threatening lawsuit letter. Millbrae is our own family, and we need to do what is right for our family. As we know, Millbrae is a small city of about 3.2 or 3.3 square miles and a population of approximately a little over 22,000. In all of my 49 plus years in our community, I have never heard anyone say or suggest that Millbrae is in violation of the California voting rights. Nor have I heard that our elections are unfair and lack equity. Candidates for office are to blame, or that candidates for office are to blame for diminished accountability, outrageous costs associated with running a credible campaign in our current system, that we have inner circles and those with the most money are elected. In Millbrae, I would say these are outrageous, unproven accusations. Campaigns and elections are not about the money. They're about the people recognition and the trust. You don't need to have money wars to win an election. What would our votes rather have? A large voting, at-large voting or split district voting? 5 council members working for them or only 1 council member per district? Please be sure that when research is done regarding equity, that you search for the various ethnic populations within each district. To me, it seems that Millbrae, our Millbrae family, is integrated and balanced. Thank you.
Thank you, former Mayor Colapietro.
You're welcome.
Looking for any further hands raised?
There's another iPhone 6 Plus that I will unmute.
If you could please give your name, please. iPhone 6 Plus.
I think it's me. I'm Rose. I totally disagree to subdivide Millbrae into smaller district for the following reasons. One, Millbrae is small enough compared to other large cities like San Francisco, South San Francisco, Birmingham, San Mateo, San Jose. And I don't understand why that we want to subdivide such a small district. I mean, such a small city. And why are we doing subdividing Millbrae? So far, I can't think of any benefits for doing it. But one thing for sure, 100% sure, that we will incur more expenses for the subdividing. Like more city council, more expenses, more HR expenses, more election expenses, more HR expenses, more payroll, more admin expenses. So why are we doing that? I don't see any benefits. And how do they come up with more money to fund all those expenses? Of course, they're going to the homeowner for raising up property taxes or higher sales taxes or anything to come up with the money to pay the additional expenses. And one thing I don't know how they're going to subdivide the district based on what? Based on the number of people or based on the number of household, based on number of voters? Those are not correct measurement because there are more, there are areas has more dense than the other, and there are more voter vote in this area than the other. And there are more square footage for one area than the other. So how do you base on? Is that going to vary, represent the district? And I can see San Francisco is such a big city. They can do like square footage or number of voter or things like that. But Millbrae, there are not enough measurement that you can subdivide. So it is a very big decision there. So again, I really disagree with this subdividing. Thank you.
And Rose, may I get your full name for the record, please?
I'm sorry.
Your full name?
Oh, Rose Kong, K-O-N-G.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kong.
Mayor Snyder, I also want to note the City Council received electronic mail today regarding this item. It was forwarded to you just before the start of this regular meeting. It was from Wayne Lee.
I apologize, Mr. Lee. We had a special council meeting and then I had dinner before council. So I haven't checked email since about since about 6 o'clock. Is it something, Elaine, we should read into the record?
Typically,
Mayor, if I may, I think Mr. Wayne Lee already made comments into the record.
Okay, very good then. And just for the public, it always helps council members. If you're going to send us a letter, try to get it a few hours before our council meeting. Otherwise, we may not have the opportunity to read what you've written to us. So for the future, I do not see any other hands raised. And city clerks reported out on electronic. I didn't get any electronic other than the request to move the agenda item. I don't know if there is no one there. I'm once, gone twice, 3 times. I'm closing public comment period and bringing it back to city council. I did take notes from every speaker, and there are a number of questions that I think staff could answer, but I can go after. Oh, and I just see a new hand raised. I'm sorry, Mr. Deng, that came in after the close. Elaine, that it did come in after the close. There are going to be 5 meetings, at least 5 public meetings. So we are going to have plenty of opportunity to hear from the public. City Council comments, questions for staff, or looking for City Council comments.
Madam Mayor, if you'd like to get your questions answered before we go, that's fine.
Well, let me see if just some of them. The last speaker brought up some good points in terms of, let's go with, and we may not know the answers yet. Will district elections increase the city's election expenses? Will it increase more HR, more payroll? Will we be raising property tax or sales tax to pay for going into districts? But I know she was curious or concerned about what criteria the city might use for creating districts, and I think our attorney can address some of that. And I'm sorry, I'm scanning notes here. Let me start with those. More of them, I think, are just how would we do it? Former Mayor Fogarty's comments about public meetings, or maybe additional meetings with some of the existing city groups out there. I would like to think that every single person in Millbrae is as important as perhaps somebody who serves on the Millbrae Lions Club. But I'm sure that our public process will be open to everyone. And, but those were good comments about how to reach out to people about the city's future. So those were just some. I know there were more, but people were speaking very quickly. Staff, do you want to try to answer Ms. Kong's questions?
Yeah, so the one question I heard that might be directed my direction was, you know, how are the districts created, or what's considered from a population standpoint? And just federal law is very clear. We just consider from a population standpoint, total population, and it has to be within a 10% standard deviation at most. It's better to get closer. So what that means is all the districts have to be, you know, about equal in total population. So that's not registered voters, not adults. You know, that's total people. That is one of the mandatory considerations that the council would be dealing with when districting.
Okay. I would say a number of speakers, I think Mr. Chen brought up that it could be that somebody wins in a district with fewer votes than the second place in another district. That is likely. And those are all really good concerns to bring to our assembly and senators for fixes to the California Voting Rights Act. There are many problems with the CVRA in terms of really creating diversity and opportunity. So I think many of the speakers had good comments. They can't help us. It can't change what we have to do, but it could be added to our legislative requests to our assemblyman and to our senator. Still waiting for, I don't see any hands raised. City manager, do we have any idea of what this is going to cost? The staff report does talk about what it will cost to hire a demographer and the attorney. It did not specify the cost of running public meetings and public outreach efforts, but I thought, do you have a vague idea of what this will cost to actually go to districts?
Well, I will start with the fiscal impact alone of just the process to date. Has cost the city upwards of $100,000 as we move forward with the required meetings and additional analysis and required demographic data pursuant to state law. At the end of the day, we could be, you know, $200,000 plus just to get to that fifth council meeting for adoption of district boundaries. So right there, it's already been a very costly process. Now, in terms of the election itself, we have reached out to the county register of voters. Elaine, I don't know if we have information back from them, if 5 districts or 4 districts versus at large, if there's any more cost that the county would charge us as a municipality.
So basically, they said that it shouldn't be too much of a difference as far as at large or by district. However, we also need to have a GIS consultant that help us with the mapping. And then on top of that, I just want to include the 30K cap that if we adopt the resolution tonight as well.
Yeah, and so I think, you know, we haven't fully analyzed it yet, you know, mayor and council and the public. I do believe obviously there will be an additional cost. I just don't know, you know, if it's extremely high or if it's, you know, within a reasonable amount. So we will bring that back to the city council once we analyze it further.
Okay, and I can, for example, more human resources, more payroll, just so that the public knows, Millbrae's current city council and any future city council, we don't have our own legislative aides. We don't have our own staff. We have a shared office that actually has another staff member working in that office. By dividing up into districts, I don't think we're going to be getting our own staff members. I don't see any changes in that way. And I do now finally see, not finally, sorry, council members. I do see hands raised. I'm not sure who raised first. I'm going to call on Ruben Holliber.
I think Councilmember Pappen was first.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Holliber. Councilman Pappen?
I'll wait for the other colleagues.
Okay, in which case, Mr. Holliber, please go ahead.
I guess I'll go ahead. Well, first of all, thank you to all of the members of the public who attended the meeting, who care very much about the election system here in Millbrae. And unfortunately, this is a sad day for Millbrae that we're at this point. As was mentioned, this is not because of some grassroots effort, some large mobilization of people in Millbrae that are demanding district elections. This is really because of one twice unsuccessful candidate, and wants to change our system of free and fair elections here in Millbrae, as well as an attorney from Malibu who wants to make a quick buck on Millbrae taxpayers. And they forced us into this situation. I agree with the speakers that district elections are a very poor fit for Millbrae, both because of our size as a small community, in terms of both population as well as geographic area, very compact, as well as small. We also are a very integrated community. I think this would make a lot of sense in larger communities and in communities that are pocketed with different ethnic groups heavily concentrated in one area or another, which I think is certainly not the case here in Millbrae. And I think for a community like us, district elections really create a poor council, poor outcomes in terms of the council. I think it promotes division. It also disenfranchises voters who lose the ability to vote for all 5 council members. And it creates a situation where council members are looking out first and foremost for their own district as opposed to the city as a whole. I also want to state for the record, there were some factual errors in the demand letter from the attorney regarding support for certain candidates. I can say, for example, there's a candidate who's Asian American who lost in the previous election, who actually did worse in precincts that were more heavily Asian than precincts that were slightly less heavily Asian. I could say in the last 2 elections, we've had the same candidate win first place in every single precinct. So I think there's very little differences in terms of the preferences of Millbrae voters on a geographic basis. But nevertheless, the burden of proof, as was mentioned by our attorney, is much higher for cities than it is for the plaintiffs. And the risks are high if we were to lose this. I think if the risk were 200,000, 300,000, I would say, yeah, let's fight this. But if the risk is potentially several $1 million if we were to lose a lawsuit, I think really sort of forces our hand and would not be prudent to move in that direction. So my heart says to fight this and to keep up with our current election system, but my head says to acquiesce to the attorney and be able to control our own process of setting the districts. I certainly don't want to be in a situation where a judge tells us how the district maps have to be made, and that has been the case in other cities. For example, I believe the city of Palmdale court-imposed map put 4 council members, sitting council members, into one district. So I think we certainly don't want to be in that situation, and we want to make this an open system, an open process where members of the public have full say in the ability to draw maps. And ultimately, it is council's decision as to how those maps are drawn. That's all that I have for now, but those are my 2 cents for this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Holliber. Vice Mayor Oliva, unless Councilwoman Pappen wants to step back into line. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Councilmember Holliber, that was beautifully said. Thank you for exactly what we all are thinking. At least what I'm thinking. I would just add, because I want to compliment the speakers. I would just add, yes, the heart hurts, but the mind knows what it needs to do. But I want to just add that the body feels the pain and the passion to the speakers that were in the audience. And I hope that we can make a promise that we're going to do the right thing, because we're not going to be frivolous with the risk of millions of dollars. Yet we're going to make sure that we do this as correct as possible. It's not right, but we're gonna make it the best we can make it, and we're gonna put a lot of time, energy, and effort into this so that these districts can be formed as, oh geez, I don't know, I hate to even use the word, but as best they can. That's what I'm going to say. So thank you. And Councilman Hollabaugh, again, I want to say those comments were incredibly well said. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilwoman Pappen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I too would also like to thank all the members of the public who spoke up tonight, because we have heard from many of you, although we have not been allowed to openly discuss this or respond to you. The desire of the public within Millbrae to really have a say in who each and every council member is. Councilmember Oliver put it very, very well. So thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And we continue to try to do our best to represent everyone in this city. And we will continue to do so throughout this process. I think our special counsel, Alan, has really put forward that the state legislature really gives us no other alternative in this process. We are not a good candidate for this alleged violation, but we have only one way to resolve this without going to court and spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight this. We would love to fight it. We just are not in a position to do that financially. And as has been explained to us, we may not be successful as the law is currently written by members of the state legislature. And without members of our legislature really clarifying this or giving us other alternatives to resolve this, because as we go down this process and have these public meetings and get the input and look at the maps, it doesn't necessarily resolve what the alleged violation is. By cutting Millbrae up into different pieces, we may still have an alleged issue that has been described here, but nobody wants to violate the Voters' Rights Act. We totally get that, but again, it really hasn't been proven here, but we have no alternatives but to proceed down this path and try to look at what maps will be proposed and talk to the public and hopefully engage as many people as we possibly can here. That's the goal, is to really get the public more involved here. So thank you, everyone. And we will continue to represent everyone within the city of Millbrae as we were elected to do. And hopefully this will come to some resolution and we will avoid extensive litigation. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pappen. Councilman Fong, I
Thank you,
don't
Madam.
see, okay, there you are. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Madam Mayor. Yes. So first of all, I wanted to thank every speaker who spoke on this topic. The suggestion, one suggestion is very important, I think is very valuable, is that this is an important decision for our city. Our city has always, everyone in our city has always been able to vote for every single council member that represent them. Everyone here who voted in Millbrae, they have 5 votes. They voted for every council member who represent them. And now with this California Voters' Rights Act, and now decided that we have to decide to move the district election. Now, 4 out of 5 votes. And that's unfair to our voters. That's unfair to our people. It's not doing the Millbrae a service. So it's extremely important that we hold as much meeting as we need, community meeting wise. Doesn't necessarily have to be a council meeting, but at least the public needs to know how we got here, why we're doing it, and how we can do it as fair and as equitable as possible. And it is important for the public to engage.
Anders,
And so,
I'm
just
sorry.
like former Mayor Fogarty has said.
Anders, I'm sorry to
Yes,
interrupt. You cut out a
Madam
little
Mayor?
bit there. You're cutting out a little bit. You may want to turn your camera off. I apologize.
Can
You're on my end, you're cutting in and out. So I'm hearing about every other word. Try now.
Can you hear me okay now?
You're coming in better. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay now?
You're coming in great.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So what I wanted to say is, I think it is important that we get the public engaged on this topic as much as possible. The idea of having, more community outreach to all the Surface Club, Lions, Rotary, and other clubs within our community to get everyone involved in this process is extremely important. This is a huge decision for our city. It didn't seem like we have a choice here that we must go to district, but how we draw up the boundaries, the public must be able to have a say in this. And the public has certainly the right to know how we got here and why we are here. So I think it's important to note that I'm usually, not emotional on topics, especially on council meeting, but this one here, it really hit me hard because Millbrae is being bullied in this particular case by those who threaten to sue us, and it's costing us, as city manager has already articulated, hundreds of thousands of dollars that we otherwise shouldn't have to spend and could have spent on, providing better services to our residents. And so we're here primarily because, there's a self-serving agenda by somebody. So it is important for the public to understand the facts, how we got here, why we're here, and obviously we need to move forward as a city. So I would recommend we, do as much community outreach as we can to ensure the public has a participation in how our future district line will be drawn. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Fung. Okay, as you've heard from all of our council members, the California Voting Act looks at a very narrow rationale for why districts are needed, and whether or not they proved it in the letter. The recommendation tonight is to go forward. I do think every speaker brought up excellent points, and now that we're here in the public, I would like this law fixed. It is not districting for the right reasons. It's not looking at reality. And Millbrae, here's another example where we are actually very good. We have really good female representation on our council. In fact, in San Mateo County in general, we have good female representation. But if you look at the state level and the federal level, women are still remarkably underrepresented in terms of their elected officials. And districting is not necessarily the way you fix underrepresentation. Providing opportunities, getting people onto committees and commissions, encouraging them to take on leadership roles is how we grow the next set of Millbrae leaders, and districts do not do that. So whereas I think some of my council members think I agree with districting, the one thing I would say I agree with is I am looking forward to the day when we have someone from Millbrae who lives on the east side of El Camino Real, whether it's Marina Vista or Bayside Manor, because I grew up here, and I will tell you, I never went to the east side until my last year in high school. And I am a geographer, and I do believe that railroad tracks and roads can create barriers. And they could be just entirely in my head, in our heads. But I think that there's ways that we can work more to bring the community together and do that. I had wanted this year to create more neighborhood meetings where council could go and meet and hear individually different neighborhoods, different concerns. But here's the reality. We are where we are. We need to move forward on this. We are very much at the end of our time clock based on when the letter was received. We received an extension because of COVID. And then when the governor released the emergency orders, the clock started ticking. So we are where we are. I agree with all my council members that we need to do a very good outreach effort, not just to our community groups, but to all of our people, especially if we're going to be honest with ourselves, those people, sorry to use that word, those, to reach out to people who don't really feel comfortable speaking to us. If we can figure that out, then we've made a big step as a community to get everyone coming and sharing with us and trying to make the best of the situation as it is. But with that, we are where we are. And unless council has more, I see another hand raised. I'll call Councilwoman Pappen, but if we can get a motion and move on. And I would encourage the public to read the staff report and to read the whereases, because many of the comments that the public gave today are in the whereases. Your areas of anger are in the whereases in the resolution. So if you could take just a little bit of time, you can hear that your government is listening and has listened to you. And while none of us are happy with this, we're stuck moving forward. But I would hope that Assemblyman Mullen and Senator Becker hear us and make some changes to this law in the future so that it really accomplishes whatever it's intending to accomplish. With that, I see Councilwoman Pappen and Councilman Holliber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To be clear, when I campaign, and I think many of the candidates here have campaigned, we walk all over the city and we try to represent every single person. We have had candidates from various corners of this city, and they have voted. And they have elected us to represent everyone, and we take that very, very seriously. So I hope we're not suggesting that there is any divisiveness here. We want to bring this city together. I think we are together, and we listen to everyone, and we will continue to do so throughout our elected time on this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pappen. Councilman Holliber.
Thank you for that comment. I agree with what you, Madam Mayor, what you had said about making sure that our Assembly member and Senator know. I think Millbrae is a pretty good case study for a poor fit of the CVRA and how, despite all of these factors that seem to make Millbrae, showcase that we're a poor fit, we're still being forced into this position, despite really no statistical data or evidence that has been submitted by the plaintiffs validating their claims of racially polarized voting in Millbrae. So I would encourage us to keep up those discussions with our legislators, and also perhaps to reach out to some of the other cities here in San Mateo County that have been served by these demand letters, such as San Bruno, Burlingame, San Mateo, that are all going through this process now, because I think there could potentially be strength in numbers if we do reach out to our legislators with our other cities, local neighboring cities involved as well in those discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Holliber. And I think we're fortunate that both Councilwoman Pappen and Councilman Fung are on the City and County Association of Governments Legislative Committee. And I believe Councilwoman Pappen is the chair. So maybe this can be something as we're rolling into the new legislative year that can come up. And I think
Pacifica, that's a great idea.
Right, Pacifica would be with us, as would Half Moon Bay. So I think that's a great recommendation, Councilman. Okay, any further comments? All right, if there is no further comments, if there could be a motion, this is an action to approve the resolution. Hold on, I can read it. 1 second. Oh, well, a resolution to approve the intent of the California Voter Rights Act. If there could be a motion in a second. Okay, I'm seeing heavy thinking here. I will tell you, City Manager, our due date for the resolution based on the timing of the California Voter Rights Act is October 14th.
October 15th, Mayor.
October 15th. So we are
this Friday.
We're at the deadline, folks. And for the public, thank you, Councilman Holliber. Is there a second?
Oliva, second.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. For the public, just so you understand, if we do not complete this by Friday, October 15th, it opens us up to additional, it opens up the litigation door. So with that, any further discussion? City Clerk, could you please call the vote?
Councilmember Holliber,
Grudgingly, aye.
Councilmember Fung,
This is not a good day for Millbrae. I have to vote aye because I don't want to open up Millbrae to a big litigation and a big financial liability, but very reluctantly aye.
Councilmember Pappen,
Similarly, with a heavy heart, aye.
Vice Mayor Oliva,
Grudgingly, aye.
Mayor Snyder.
Ditto to everyone before me, and with a strong message to our Assemblyman and Senator, aye.
The City Council adopted a resolution declaring the city's intent to transition from an at-large election system to a district-based election system and direct staff to proceed with the required public meetings to create council district by the vote of 5-0.
Thank you, City Clerk. To the public, the clock starts ticking as of our vote tonight, and the first meetings must be held within the next 30 days, City Manager or Attorney. Is that correct?
So just small difference. The requirement is that there's the first two hearings which no maps will be shown as per the requirements of the elections code must be held within 30 days of each other.
Oh, okay. 30
Yeah,
days
but
of
just
each other,
as
but
a-
not
as-
clicking.
Right, but as a practical matter, you're right that when you're dealing with the 90 days, it's a practical requirement.
So for the people here who are attending via Zoom or on TV, if you haven't already, please go to the city's website, go to e-notify and click on City News so that you can stay informed as easily as possible. Nextdoor is not a good tool to being informed of what city business is doing, but the e-notify page will walk you through it, or reach out to any one of your council members. We will help you make sure that you can stay informed on this. To Attorney Fenstermacher and our other attorneys who began with this, and to staff and to council, thank you so much. We will move forward. Okay, moving on to our regular agenda. We are now back to agenda item number 8. This is a resolution authorizing the city manager or designee to execute an amendment with the County of San Mateo to provide police services in the amount not to exceed $6,594,172, with an option to increase by an additional $150,000 for supplemental downtown patrol services for the period of July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. And this is an action item. City Manager, I believe we've got Chief Porpoise is giving the presentation.
Yes, Mayor, but for that, I have our Finance Director, Mr. Mike Sung, to give a brief presentation. Then we'll hand it over to our Bureau Chief, Ms. Christina Corpus.
Excellent. Thank you, City Manager.
Mike.
Thank you, City Manager Williams. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. Today, we're going to talk about the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office contract amendment. We're also looking at possibly adding a dedicated downtown foot patrol. Okay, is everybody seeing the?
Yes, you're coming in fine.
Okay. Let me make sure that the doesn't look like it's actually
moving forward. Right now it's on the cover page.
Is it on the cover page? Okay.
Yeah, it says it has the add dedicated downtown foot patrol.
Okay. Is it still on the cover page?
Still is. I think the gremlins are with us tonight.
Is it still on the cover page?
It
Yes,
is.
it is.
It always works in dress rehearsal, but it's live TV, folks. This is live TV.
I do apologize for the technical difficulties. Let me try sharing another screen then.
I think it's an example of teamwork.
Elaine has this too, Mike, if Elaine wants to pop it up and.
If that's not too much trouble, Elaine, could you pop this up?
And that's okay. We all need a deep breath right now anyway. So take your time, Mr. Sung.
Mike, could you resend it to me, please?
Sure, I'll send it right now.
I know Elaine will work her magic, but if you wanted to go forward, we're at 8:27, so we're doing okay tonight.
In the interim, Mr. Oliva might want to give a baseball score.
I think that's an excellent suggestion.
It's not that great.
Uh-oh.
It's worse than the last vote. It's 5-1 LA. It's the bottom of the fifth.
There we go. Well, at least we have a presentation now.
The good thing is that everybody will be back at Fiddler's.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Mr. Sung, go ahead.
So that means
Now
hurry
it's
up,
on
Mike.
contract amendment 13.
Okay, thank you for your patience, and we do apologize for the technical difficulties. The city has an agreement with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office to provide police services. We currently have multiple amendments. We are on contract amendment 13. So back in June, City Council had actually adopted an appropriation of budget for $6.6 million for police services provided by the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. And we received the fiscal year 21-22 contract amendment from the Sheriff's Office, San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, on September 29th. So that's why we're bringing this forward right now. Also, along with that, there's also, due to an increase in crime in the downtown stemming really from the sweeping of BART, staff recommends activating an additional option for dedicated downtown foot patrol officer at an additional cost of $150,000. Next slide, please. So what the supplemental foot patrol officer is going to be doing, and really briefly, and Chief Corpus will get a little bit more into this with more details in her presentation, is they're going to look at all the crimes that have been increased, including defecating in public intoxication, shoplifting, assaults, loitering, and it's not limited to just these crimes. Now, staff has actually collaborated with the Millbrae Bureau Chief, and what we've come up with is we believe a dedicated downtown foot patrol officer can become a resource to assist with deterring this and really rapidly responding to these crimes. Just having this additional resource could help mitigate a lot of the crimes that we are seeing. Next slide, please.
There we go.
Oh, thank you. So the projected cost for this supplemental downtown patrol service is $150,000. So we've come up with a funding strategy for fiscal year 21-22. And this involves three different sources that we're looking at. We have about $53,000 in savings from fiscal year 2021 from excess revenue funds for police services. Police have been very prudent with the contract services that they have, and any savings goes back into the city fund. So we're also projecting out possibly about $84,000 of excess revenue funds for 21-22. We think we'll need about approximately $13,000 of additional general fund contribution for this year in order to offset this additional $150,000 cost. So that should total the amount that we're looking at, which is about $150,000. Staff will review this and evaluate the effectiveness of the additional service and make a recommendation for the fiscal year 22-23 budget, operating budget at that time. Next slide, please. So what I also wanted to mention was there's actually an additional service to assist with the mitigation of increased crimes and crises as well. There was an additional $150,000 that was budgeted in the fiscal year 21-22 operating budget. We're looking to partner with San Mateo County for a contract social services worker, and the social services worker will assist with the vulnerable population and in the middle of these crises. This really is a total, if we're really looking at things, of an additional $300,000 in investment by Millbrae, mainly due to the increased crime that's a direct result of the current BART practices at the Millbrae station. Next slide, please. So staff recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager or designee to execute an amendment to the agreement with the County of San Mateo to provide police services in an amount not to exceed the roughly $6.6 million here, with an option to increase by an additional $150,000 for supplemental downtown patrol services for the period of July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. Now I'm going to turn this over to our Millbrae Bureau Chief, Christina Corpus, and I'm going to go ahead and try to share a screen here. If you could take that off, Elaine, I'm going to try to share Chief Corpus's presentation here.
Thank you, Finance and Administrative Director Sung. And we'll hold then questions till after Chief Corpus.
Mike, if you need me to, I could also share it too, unless you guys have edits.
Vice Mayor, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Well, since we're stalling here for a second, why do we have to wait so long to put it into play till July?
No, it started in July of 2021
No,
is how I read it.
The money is there, but why do we have to wait so long to put it into place? Not the funding, but to get everything on board, getting this, if in fact it is approved.
City Manager, is that something you could answer while staff is, there we go. Proposal's almost up. It's on shared screen or not full screen.
Okay, let's try this again.
Start the slideshow.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Conneran.
Do we see the slideshow now?
No.
Well, we do. We see it all on the little side column. It's full screen, isn't it? There we go. You've got it.
All right. So I'll go ahead and turn this over to our Millbrae Bureau Chief, Christina Corpus, at this time.
Just real quick, Chief, unless the Vice Mayor, I can quickly answer that question. So the City Council did allocate the $6.6 million in funding. We just received the contract. I believe it was October.
September 29th.
September 29th, we received the contract for the fiscal year from the sheriffs. So that's why we're bringing it forward. So the money's been allocated. It's
Right.
the formal contract changes were brought to us the end of September. And so we're bringing it forward to the City Council.
So just a little out of sync. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and City Manager. Chief Corpus?
Good evening, council members. Tonight, I'm going to just report out on a proposal for police services for the downtown area. The proposal is to provide coverage 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, to the city of Millbrae for the downtown patrol. The walking beat or bicycle beat would be filled by deputies on overtime. The hours of the beat would be from 9 o'clock in the morning until 7 p.m. The deputy would walk in the downtown area checking in with business owners, and work with the San Mateo County Homeless Outreach Team and Life Moves to provide services to the transient population that are primarily in the city's downtown area. This affords the deputy to continue to build relationships with community members and effectively deter crime. The beat is 1 deputy per shift, and the city of Millbrae is proposing $150,000 to support these efforts. Next slide, please. So what the deputy would do essentially is when they're walking the beat, they would make contact with any individuals that they come into contact that appear to be unhoused or transient, and work with our San Mateo County HOT team and with Life Moves in efforts to try to get the person to some services. And they would also engage the community members and the business owners really with a dedicated focus on engagement and really working to try to get the unhoused population the services that are needed. Next slide, please. So again, maintaining high visibility downtown, working with Life Moves, the homeless outreach team, and other county agencies to provide services. It's to deter criminal activity within the downtown area, strengthening the relationships with the merchants, business owners, members of the community. Next slide, please. So again, it would be a Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And it would be a deputy sheriff, a voluntary sign up, and they could either walk the beat or be on a bicycle. So again, the budget for this is proposed for $150,000 in overtime funding, and we would be evaluating to ensure that we do not go over that $150,000. Next slide, please. So the deputies will document their contacts while on foot patrol and report any referrals made to, for the unhoused population. Deputies will continue to write a crime report for any cases taken while they're out on foot patrol. And then the sheriff's office will provide City Manager Williams with a monthly report on the outcomes to ensure that the walking beat is a viable resource for the city of Millbrae. So this is just a picture of, we did a 2-week pilot program where we had deputies do the walking beat and work with Life Moves and the HOT team. And this is an individual that is known to Millbrae. And, you know, we made attempts to get her some help, and it was, it's all voluntary. She refused to do so, but we did make contact and we were able to get her some temporary resources at the time. But in speaking with the deputies, we received some very positive feedback from community members, and we were able to make quite a few contacts with some of the transient population. And that's the end of my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Chief Corpus. Well, switching screens here. Council, questions? Questions for Mr. Sung or Chief Corpus? Councilwoman Pappen and then Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. For the public, and I hope the city manager can clarify this, that public safety is the biggest cost financially as far as city services to our residents. So Mr. Williams, can you clarify police and fire, quote unquote, the cost of that? Because I think social media or next door has already taken this out of context.
So in regard as a percentage of public safety costs, police and fire of our general fund budget. Yeah, so it's more than 50%. I think it's closer to 60% of our total budget. We contract, as everyone knows, I believe, for police services with San Mateo County Sheriff and for fire paramedic services with Central County Fire Department. We're not on the Central County Fire Department board. We are just a client, and we contract with them. And so with that, 60% of our general fund goes to public safety. And to your point, Councilmember Pappen, it is expensive, to make sure that the community is safe and that we have, our response times are in line with the level of service that the city council has adopted, and something that needs to be done. I will say this, that, Mike had mentioned it, that this city council has recognized, and I want to kind of, in the staff report, it can be interpreted that, there's all this crime in Millbrae and that type of thing. And, Millbrae is a very safe city. It's a very safe community. And Councilmember Hollerman and I had this discussion earlier today. But what we need to recognize is, because of BART, and we know the stories, because the council has now spent with this contract and with the Life Moves contract over the last month in this fiscal year, $300,000 directly related, to some of these petty crimes that are, creating nuisance within our downtown businesses and our patrons. And so this is, another means of the council recognizing what the issues are, stepping up, identifying it, funding it, putting the right resources where they need to be. And hopefully we can get the attention of our transit agencies to, participate. They, I've said it, they need to be a stakeholder here. They need to take responsibility for this regional issue, because it is unfair to Millbrae and the citizens of Millbrae to be burdened with this solely without any assistance from our regional partners. That excludes the county. With Supervisor Pine, he did allocate $100,000 to the Life Moves program as a partner with the city. But I would really like to see the transit agencies, be a stakeholder in helping resolve and fund this issue the right way. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Williams. Yes, and I applaud this council for being compassionate to the unhoused, but what the residents are seeing and what we all are seeing are the increase in crime from some of the I don't want to label this as the transient population. It's more of the drug abusers that are coming in from San Francisco with the drug needles provided by San Francisco via BART, who does not enforce fares and then sweeps people off the train at night and closes down their facilities. So the people on the trains have no place to go but to our city. And there has been an increase at our stores. People who work in the stores have been assaulted. This is something that I campaigned on, and I think we should be getting reimbursement from BART regarding some of these costs. But the whole primary focus for all of us here is public safety. And I commend Captain Corpus and our previous captain for suggesting this downtown patrol. I know other cities have had downtown patrols. It's really the most direct one-on-one contact, community policing, really getting to know who the public is too and what their needs are. I think this is really important and will be a great benefit to the city. Thank you very much. I'm eager to see, I think it's already working, and hopefully it will be a deterrent and really keep people safer. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pappen. Vice Mayor Oliva.
Yes, Captain Corpus, thank you so much, very much for this presentation. And I feel like Councilmember Pappen brings up a great point with the expense of this. It's unfortunately the expense of freedom for those that need the freedoms, right? But I think that what this council is doing is being proactive instead of reactive, because in the scheme of things, when we have to react to a catastrophe and we don't have somebody on foot downtown, the expense is much more than than what we're doing here, and at the expense of everybody, because the stores, in the scheme of things, are going to save some money. We're going to save some money by not having to use all the emergency vehicles if we can be proactive instead of reactive. So I am 100% behind this, and I'm so grateful that we are doing something. And yes, there's compassion, absolutely, but yet the compassion, we need to be compassionate for all of our peoples. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilman Holber, and then Councilman Fung.
Thank you very much. I wholeheartedly support this program. I think it would be excellent to have. And that is one comment I've heard, is that there has not been a lot of police presence downtown. So I think having somebody on a foot or on a bike who is in our downtown area, and also both working with the transient population as well as engaging with our population in general. It's an important part of community policing for our residents and our business owners to have the opportunity to get to meet the local first responders. So I think that seems like an excellent program. Glad to see it. The staff report did mention one program and kind of like an update on, and that is the license plate readers. This had been approved in fiscal year 2019-20. As far as I know, they have not been installed yet or even permitted yet. It's been roughly 2 years now. Anything we can do to get that moving, because that's incredibly important to deterring and also enforcing property crimes, home burglaries, auto burglaries, catalytic converter thefts that have been on the rise recently. So it would be critical to get those in as soon as possible.
Chief Corpus, can we get an update to the councilman's question?
Yeah, maybe Tom, do you want to
Sure,
chip in on that? Okay.
Yeah, and that's a great question. So we've been waiting for Caltrans, to permit the fixed locations and also PG&E of the identified fixed locations for the license plate readers. Since Chief Corpus has come on board, she researched and introduced a different vendor known as the Flock system, which is a portable system where, based on the cost, we can actually get more license plate readers that are portable, and we will not have to wait for the permitting from Caltrans and PG&E. And so this is something that I will be bringing forward to the infrastructure subcommittee. I'm trying to get a meeting with that subcommittee next week to introduce this new system and then bring this change to the city council for that contract change and redirection on the license plate readers. I know it's been a long time. It has been hung up with Caltrans, unfortunately, but I think we have a solution to get this done now sooner rather than later. And if I can I make one more comment, Mayor, if I may? I don't have the raise hand feature, but I mean, I do believe in the comments made by the council. The combination of this and Life Moves, I think, is just ideal. And I do believe that with Life Moves, those social workers will deter the crime by helping people get the services they need so those people don't have to commit the crimes. And so I think that, again, as Councilmember Pappen has said, this council has recognized it. As a vice mayor said, we're ahead of it. We're being proactive. And I'm excited about this because that combination, this could be a great model nationally. That partnership with, providing the social workers out in the field, communicating and working with the deputies. A lot of people talk about this, but I think, we are actually implementing it. It can be quantified. It will be measured. The chief and her team, they keep data and records and statistics that, will report back to the city council, even prior to Chief Corpus coming on board. Chief Kunkel kept those records. That's how we evolved where we are today, and being able to identify the root of those crimes and taking action here. And I'm looking forward to this year because I think that this is a winning combination to help people before they actually commit the crime and get the services that they need, so they don't have to steal and do these petty thefts that are occurring.
Thank you, City Manager, and thank you, Chief Corpus. That's great to hear that we have a workaround and that we don't have to keep waiting for yet another transportation-related agency on that.
That will happen quick. I know council's anxious, and I already have the draft contract from Flock and just waiting to move forward as I bring it to the council. So things will move.
Councilman Holliber and I are happy, I'm sure, to meet with you as soon as we can.
Yeah.
Was that a Councilman Holliber question?
It was.
Okay. Councilman Holliber, do you have other questions? If not, I'll call on Councilman Fung.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I wanted to thank Chief Corpus for, having getting this along the way, recognizing that there has
Oh, you're cutting out again.
Issues.
Councilman, I'm sorry.
Let me try to turn the video off. Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, City Manager, as well as Chief Corpus, for bringing this forward. I wanted to say that first, I want to recognize some of the things that's been happening around the city. On the Encinitas area, on Upper Mills Estate, there's been a couple of home invasions in the last year. Some businesses along El Camino Real has been broken into, as well as the Walgreens close to Lucky, and a few other places. This a combination between the homelessness subcommittee was able to brought forward along with Supervisor Pine's office and a live move with the social workers, along with this downtown foot and bike patrol officer, is a perfect combination to addressing some of these issues downtown that we've been seeing. Also, I want to, for the benefit of the public, the city of Millbrae is dedicated and focused on bringing you effective and high quality public safety services. And this is our way to tell the public that we're dedicated to that. Continue to invest our resources in keeping everyone safe. So, hopefully with this foot and bike patrol officer, we can free up our, other officers who are driving around with the cruiser patrolling around the city, so that they can focus on some of the residential areas and pay attention to some of those issues that are in other parts of the city, rather than just focusing on the downtown. And hopefully this, we can, ideally speaking, I'd like to have this downtown patrol officer to be more on bike than it is on foot, so that he or she can patrol the transit area as well as the downtown area. For example, if certain things, certain emergency call were to be needed while he was patrolling the transit area, something came up near the Pancake House, for example, he can get there in a quick amount of time. So we can shorten our response times on these issues. So it is important that we get this patrol officer as mobile as possible. If you enthusiastically support this effort, I think this is exactly what Millbrae needs. I think this is a good commitment to make and a good investment to make in ensuring that public safety is number one on our priorities.
Thank you, Councilman.
Madam Mayor, for clarification.
Yes, please.
Councilmember Fung, we still have the regular street patrols. This is more of a focus on the downtown area. And I kind of believe that walking a beat helps people engage our law enforcement and develop more in-depth relationships, so that they can kind of hopefully get to know the public and trust, build a mutual trust between our residents. So as far as getting to other places in the city, we still have the cars. And I think Captain Corpus can clarify that. This is in addition to what we already have.
Thank you, Councilman Pappen. And I believe Chief Corpus is giving us a police report update on one of our November council meetings. City Clerk, I'm pretty sure I saw that. And then she'll really talk about response times. That's always part of the annual report on that. my comments then. Again, thank you for this. I understand us needing to be proactive. I support the current budget plus the 150,000. That said, when you read the newspapers the last 2 years during COVID, what you see is every transportation agency getting incredible amounts of money to make up for their lost fare box and things like that. And then when you look at which cities get money for homeless, San Francisco gets hundreds of millions of dollars to work with the unhoused population. And yet we are stuck with a problem not of our own creation. I would like to see that we do keep track of all of the money. As Councilwoman Pappen mentioned earlier, I think we should be reimbursed. We also do not get community development block grants the way bigger cities, 50,000 and up, get automatic block grants. We have to compete for that money. And as far as I know, with the exception of the veterans housing, we have never received community development block grants. I hope I'm wrong, prove me wrong. But I really think that it shouldn't be our tax dollars paying for this. Right now it has to be. Let's track it. And let's write to our senator and our assemblyman and to Congresswoman Spear and say, you are expecting too much of a small city. And this is not fair. It's not fair to make us shoulder the burden of transportation agencies who are very well being funded by all of the support mechanisms at the state and federal level. So that's my 2 cents worth. We got to do it. I understand it. I certainly get enough complaints every week from people who are having bad experiences on Broadway, and that is not good for any of us. It's not good for business. It's not good for our reputation. So I support it. If there are no other council comments, I'm going to open it up to the public. But City Manager, I would like to see us write a letter to the senator, to our assemblyman. They may not know. They may not be able to keep up with the Daily Journal, or their staff may not be able to keep up. Let's make sure they know what we're dealing with here. With that, former Mayor Fogarty, please go ahead. And if there's anyone else in the public, please raise your hands.
I, first of all, would like to compliment the council and Chief Corpus and our city manager for following up on this. My office is on the corner of Meadow Glen and Broadway, and I have called in problems with homeless folks in the area, the unhoused, many, many times. And what I've been told is that these folks decline local services because they're required to register in San Mateo County for them. And they want to stay registered in San Francisco because San Francisco is so much more generous with benefits. I think we need to look at that issue as well. I do want to suggest that we also look at the issue of whether or not for some of these folks who are regulars to Millbrae, that we could apply for a conservatorship over them so that we can better control whether or not they receive the care they probably need. Because the city of Millbrae did this many years ago when I was on the council, and our chief of police acquired a conservatorship over one of our regular homeless folks who was creating a nuisance in town, and was able to get that person into a care facility, get that person off of his addiction, and he became a good citizen in Millbrae after that. So part of this is making sure these folks get care, and I really appreciate the fact that you're also doing that. But look at the idea of having more control over some of these regular people who show up and come to town, because one of the reasons they come to town is because it's safe in Millbrae. They're not hanging out with a bunch of other wackos, sorry to say. They feel safe here. So maybe they can be safer still by getting into some kind of a care program, a supervised care program to get out of their addictions and come back into society in a way that's good for them and good for society. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fogarty. Any other comments from the public? I see no other hands. City Clerk, do you have anybody on the phone? We still have
I do not, Mayor, but I just want to remind everyone, if you are calling in, please press *9. to raise your hand.
Okay, just giving it a couple of seconds. I'm not seeing anybody. Closing public comment. And this is an action item. So council, unless you have further comments, if I can have a motion in a second.
Oliva, so move.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Second by Councilmember Fung.
Thank you, Councilman Fung. Any further discussion? I don't need to read the whole motion, Elaine. You can do that when you call out the vote.
Sure, of course.
Okay.
Mayor.
All right. All right. If you could please call the vote.
Councilmember Holliver,
Aye.
Councilmember Fung,
Aye.
Councilmember Pappen,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Oliva,
Aye.
Mayor Snyder.
Aye.
The resolution authorizing the city manager or designee to execute amendment with the county of San Mateo to provide police service in the amount of not to exceed $6,594,172 with the option to increase by additional $150,000 for supplemental downtown patrol services for a period of July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. The motion passed by 5-0.
Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Council, and thank you, staff, for all the work on this. Moving on to agenda item number 9. This is waive the first reading and introduce ordinance amending Title II, Chapter 2.20, Sections 2.20.050 and .060 of the Millbrae Municipal Code related to supplies, non-professional services, and equipment and public projects and maintenance work. This is an action item. City Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Long title for what is a very short item. I will hand it over to Mr. Mike Sung, our Administrative Services and Finance Director, for a quick presentation.
Thank you, City Manager Williams. Okay, I'm back to sharing our screen here. This is a quick item on the purchasing policy update. So for the purchasing policy update, we do need to bring this to council because we would require an ordinance to make a change to the code. We have two really quick changes. One is section 2.20.050 for supplies, non-professional services and equipment. What we're basically proposing is increasing the threshold from $5,000 to $10,000 to really account for inflationary increases over the last 2 decades. It's basically a modernization of the amounts. What this really entails is usually we have a lot of different types of processes and things that are underneath a certain amount. It would cause too much of an administrative burden to go out and for an RFP, for example, for something that's like $10,000. That's a very small amount for an RFP. So what we're recommending is to kind of modernize this and make sure this is a lot easier to move forward with. The second portion is section 2.2060, which is the public projects and maintenance work. What we're suggesting here and recommending here is basically to just align this with the thresholds that have been adopted under AB 2249. This aligns with the California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. What this does is it increases this threshold from $45,000 to $60,000 for public projects that may be performed by employees of the city by force account, negotiated contract, or purchase order. And it also increases the threshold from $175,000 to $200,000 for public projects that must be led to contract by informal procedures. Anything above $200,000 would go out to a formal RFP. So this basically aligns us with the state. And with that, we're recommending to waive the first reading and introduce the ordinance, and we'll come back at a second council meeting for the second reading and then adoption. If there are any questions, I'm available.
Thank you, Mr. Sung. Any questions from council? Comments? I can't see your faces right now, so if you're there and you've raised your hands, go ahead. Councilwoman Pappen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to staff. I think this is reflective of how we need to move ahead, and we need to move ahead quickly in order to perform many of the contracts we have going here. the longer we wait, the more expensive things become and things don't seem to get done. So I will move approval of this item so that we can move ahead on many different projects we have and hopefully reach completion in the appropriate time frame. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I do have one question, but we do have a motion on the floor.
I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. My question when I read through this, because the city manager and I have talked about how we might have some sharing of work, sharing of employees, sharing of equipment with perhaps an adjacent city. Would this ordinance preclude us for, just for example, working with San Bruno's Public Works on potholes? Or would my reading, it sounds like we should still be able to do that, but I don't want to make sure we take away that power.
Yeah, Mayor, this does not. This is really just what the threshold is.
Just the dollar amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
For
all right.
when we have to go up, how we bid projects and the dollar amount threshold of under the law of how we bid projects.
So if we had 60,000 for Millbrae for potholes and 60,000 from San Bruno, we'd still be okay.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions from council? Okay, I'm seeing none. If opening it up for comments from the public, if you could raise your hand or *9. I am seeing no raised hands. City Clerk, anyone on the phone?
No, there's not.
Okay, close. Oh, nope. Closing public comments, bringing it back to council. If there's no further discussion, oh wait, we've got a motion and a second. City Clerk, could you call the vote?
Of course, Councilmember. And I just want to state this is to waive the first reading and introduce the ordinance by Councilmember Pappen.
Excellent.
Okay. Councilmember Halliburton.
Aye.
Councilmember Fung.
Aye.
Councilmember Pappen.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Oliva.
Aye.
Mayor Snyder.
Aye.
Okay. The City Council waived the first reading and introduced the ordinance amending Title II, Chapter 2.20, Section 2.20.050 and 2.20.060 of the Millbrae Municipal Code related to supplies, non-professional services, and equipment and public projects and maintenance work, passed by the vote of 5-0.
Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Council and staff. Last item on tonight's agenda is agenda item number 10. This is an action item. It's consideration of a resolution adopting a mitigated negative declaration and adopting the active transportation plan. I know there is a staff presentation and it was a good 55 pages of reading. And I'll just say that Community Development Director Smith and I just talked about how we might collect council comments. And as she gives her presentation, what we're hoping is she's going to try to capture any changes any of us might want in the big picture of things as opposed to minor edits. But we'll probably go section by section with each of us. If we've got a comment on that section, giving it to her, then it'll just be easier for her to take notes. So with that, City Manager or Director Smith.
Yeah, no, I'd like to just introduce our Community Development Director, Ms. Darcy Smith. I'd also like to recognize, though, the great work of our System Planner, Nestor Guevara, and our Planning Manager, Roscoe Mata, who've been helping Darcy and our team of consultants. So just wanted to recognize those two other staff members. But other than that, Ms. Darcy Smith, please take it away.
Hi, good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. We have a great presentation to you tonight. It might not be as exciting as the Giants game, so I apologize. But I have a feeling some of you are sneaking a look at home. So with that, Mr. Matt Broughton with Kittleson, can you share the screen and bring up the presentation? Great. Okay, let's go to full screen mode. Great, yes. Can everyone see this?
It's coming in great.
Okay, I want to try to avoid more technical difficulties tonight, but you never know.
The gremlin will hear that.
So this item tonight, number 10, is your active transportation plan. And I'll be making the staff presentation along with Mr. Matt Broughton, the planner from Kittleson Associates, who is the city's consultant who prepared the document. So good evening. Next slide. So as City Manager Williams pointed out, this really was a tremendous team effort, not just with planning and public works, Mr. Keelim and Mr. Andrew Yang, who've been working on this for years, along with the planning team, Mr. Mata, planning manager, Mr. Guevara, associate planner, but a huge consultant team that you see here. Our lead project managers at Mintier Harnish, and then our sub-consultants who did this at Kittleson Associates, Mike Aronson and Matt Broughton, who's making the presentation tonight. And we also had a secret consultant. So it was a huge, tremendous effort. Next slide. And our objective tonight, as the mayor said, focus on obtaining council feedback and comments, and I'll be recording those and I hope to bring them up for you in a PowerPoint slide at the very end. And we will also accept public comments, and then we will look for your consideration of a resolution adopting the mitigated negative declaration and adopting the active transportation plan. Next slide. So I'll pause here just for a moment so that you get a really big picture view of what's happening here in the simultaneous planning efforts. As you might recall, we have been working on the general plan update, and we're really excited to get that before you early next year, along with the downtown and El Camino Real specific plan, which you discussed at a study session in late September, and we'll be returning for you for more feedback on December 2nd. But this active transportation plan is integrated with these documents, but somewhat standalone, as you see in the document, because it focuses on bicycle and pedestrian connectivity and circulation, and it's integrated into the general plan and downtown El Camino Real specific plan. But we heard your feedback at your annual strategic goal setting session last March, that if we could expedite something, we should. And so we heard that direction, and we looked at what we might be able to pull out. And the easiest item was to pull out this active transportation plan, which was started in 2017, a huge amount of work done in 2018, largely finished, and kind of able to dust off the dust, as they say, and bring it forward for your consideration. So next slide. So that said, we wanted to get back out to the community and do community engagement, have community input, because some things have changed since 2018. I'll say I'm super excited to see more people biking and walking than I think ever before because of the pandemic. And so we took a look at new needs around that. There's also been emerging trends in things like micromobility, which came up at the open house, for example, and needing to address that. There's more people using our facilities than ever before, and more demand for these facilities. So we were fortunate to be able to release this draft plan on July 19th. So about 3 months ago, we've had it. And we've been able to evolve the plan as we got feedback. We went before the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Subcommittee in late August and got a number of comments there. We had an open house, which was well attended by about 20 community members on September 1st. We had a Planning Commission public meeting September 20th, and they voted unanimously with a recommendation to forward the plan to you for approval. And we're here tonight at the public meeting. Next slide. So I'll just briefly cover what's an active transportation plan, and then Mr. Broughton will dive into it in more detail as only a really skilled transportation consultant can. And then I'll come back at the end to finish up a few slides on fiscal impact and the CEQA clearance. But briefly, I'll just let you know what an active transportation plan is at a really high airplane level. So it's a comprehensive set of strategies to ensure better options for biking, walk access, and access to transit. And I want to pause there and emphasize, it's not just biking and walking. We are an integrated, accessible community. So it will also accommodate modes of transportation such as wheelchairs or scooters that use our accessible pathways. Most our sidewalks are accessible pathways under state code, and many of our class 1 pathways are also accessible. So I want to emphasize that it's not just biking and walking. And this plan includes recommendations for prioritizing infrastructure improvements. Again, you're not making any decisions tonight about budgeting for those improvements. It's again the 60,000 foot level around what you can consider in future budget decisions as they come before you as part of your annual budget or as part of applications that you're pondering for grants. And it outlines recommendations for new policies, processes, and infrastructure, again, based on public and stakeholder input and your input tonight. Next slide. So here's just a quick overview showing one of our recent active transportation plan improvements on Hillcrest. And it's important to emphasize, we have been doing active transportation for years and years. We've had great opportunities such as this crossing here to add rectangular rapid flashing beacons and high visibility crosswalks. And we'll walk you through more slides showing these concepts on other roadways and other types of improvements that we can also make. But I want to emphasize, this is something we've been doing for years and years. It's not new, but having it all in a single plan will help us look at it on a comprehensive level. And future implementation for all of these things will require more detailed analysis, more studies, more community engagement, because they're in neighborhoods or they touch businesses. So before we put those in, our public works team will, do what they do in terms of community engagement for these actual projects as part of the design and construction for them. And as I mentioned earlier, this document will be integrated with our general plan, our circulation element that focuses more on automobile travel and transit. It will be integrated with the downtown El Camino Real specific plan, which will refine the major concepts that you'll see tonight, such as Broadway and El Camino Real. And this is also kind of a decision point for you around the El Camino Real streetscape plan, which we'll present in a little bit. To get your feedback on that, and as we work on finalizing the El Camino Real streetscape plan, which we're working on now. This plan doesn't address automobiles, doesn't address things like traffic enforcement, which came in the open house, very important item, but it doesn't address sort of the integration related to automobiles. It's meant to emphasize bicycle, pedestrian, and wheelchair modes of transportation, both for active recreation and for modes of commuting. But it really is also just tailored to the person who goes out for nice walks on the spur trail, walks downtown, for example, walks the rec center. It's not just how you get to work, it's how you engage in fitness and leisure modes of transportation. So next slide. With that, I think I will turn it over, next slide, to Mr. Broughton, who will walk you through the more exciting pictures, and then I'll be back later to cover some more basic slides.
Thank you, Darcy. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council and public. So very excited to be here today. I've been involved throughout the process on this project, so it's very exciting to be before you today to present this for adoption. Wanted to start off just, Darcy started us off with the high level of what is an active transportation plan. And so first of all is, what is the purpose of this plan for Millbrae? So really first and foremost, it's understanding the existing active transportation conditions within the city. So how are people walking and biking? Where are they walking and biking? And what facilities are available to them? Based on that, we then did a assessment of needs for people walking and biking in the city, and kind of using that existing condition and needs, beginning to set those goals and actions to help achieve the vision for active transportation within the city. As Darcy mentioned, we also then step into identifying projects for bicycles and pedestrians, developing those cost estimates to help understand what it will take to get everything implemented in the plan, and then helping identify funding opportunities to help support local funds through grant programs or other funding opportunities to get those projects built. From the vision perspective, I'll just read the vision statement here. The City of Millbrae Active Transportation Plan envisions a safe, interconnected, and accessible environment for bicyclists, pedestrians, and users of evolving modes, mobility of all ages and abilities. The plan's vision consists of a network that is complete and provides convenient walking and biking facilities to local and regional destinations and amenities. What that means in terms of the goals that we're trying to achieve for the plan is providing safe and comfortable network of facilities for people walking and biking, providing accessibility for all ages and abilities, and I'll talk about what that means in a moment, Improving bicycle and pedestrian connectivity to regional facilities and access to transit to try and support transit use. Improving access to local destinations for residents, employees, and visitors. And then finally, increasing the amount of people, that people are walking and biking in Millbrae. Some of the key actions that we have for the plan, again, include providing those safe and comfortable routes, especially with connections to downtown and El Camino Real. Providing safe and comfortable bike routes through the neighborhoods in Western Millbrae. Expanding active transportation connections to transit, so that's both to bus stops as well as to the intermodal station. And then completing the great shared use path class 1 bike network that you already have with the segments of the Spur Trail, the Bay Trail, San Andreas, and Sawyer Camp Trail. So completing that network so that you can kind of ride end to end on a trail within the city. And then improving access to those regional facilities in the west, the San Andreas Trail, those recreational activities. And then kind of on the opposite end of the city, working on Eastern Millbrae Avenue to facilitate that connection over to the Bayshore Trail and Bayfront Park. And then finally, really working to provide enhanced bicycle and pedestrian facilities along and across El Camino Real, being something that we've consistently heard throughout the plan's development. From an existing conditions perspective, really a few key items that we identified as needs. Again, I mentioned already the Spur Trail. It's a great facility that exists within the city, but the opportunity to complete that network and create an environment where you can ride comfortably from end to end throughout the city along that trail. And then kind of building out from that of identifying and creating safe routes to schools and transit. So what are the parallel routes to roadways to allow people to walk or bike to school or to their bus? Connecting neighborhoods with the local and regional destinations, so connecting downtown to the broader neighborhood area through, again, those facilities that are going to serve everybody, not just the strong and fearless that I'll get to in a moment. And then enhanced crossing and facilities on Millbrae Avenue and El Camino Real. That was something that came loud and clear through all the outreach that we did, of just the strong desire to see a more pleasant experience when walking or biking across or along those two roads. I mentioned a couple times already the all ages and abilities concept. This is really something that's come out of bicycle planning through some research into some national surveys that have been conducted around why people bike or don't bike, and kind of when they choose to do so. And the general concept really is organized around how tolerant people are of roadway stress. So an environment with higher speed vehicles and high volumes of traffic would be considered high stress. Nice residential street where you're interacting every once in a while with a vehicle would be a low stress environment. And so at the two opposite ends of the spectrum, we have the strong and fearless bicyclist. This is the bicyclist that's currently riding on El Camino Real. They don't mind interacting with vehicles that are going fast or a high volume of traffic. They're comfortable taking the lane. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, we know that there's a part of the population that's just not interested in biking. And so we recognize that. But what we do want to plan for is that the largest percentage of the population, which is about half of the population, fall into the interested but concerned category. So these are people that have a low tolerance for roadway stress, so they need to feel separated from vehicles, high speed vehicles and high volume of vehicles, but they're interested in biking more, and they're just concerned about their safety and comfort in doing so with currently available facilities. And so when we plan the network out, what we're planning for is to create an environment that's going to be comfortable for that interested but concerned population. So what you see there, again, this kind of points to the emphasis of completing the Spur Trail and getting those trail connections throughout the city to make it a nice end-to-end experience where somebody doesn't have to interact with the vehicle at all, except at those street crossings to be able to walk or bike for significant distances within the city. Again, improvements on El Camino Real and on Millbrae Avenue being kind of those two very high stress situations for people that are walking or biking, where they're having to interact with a lot of turning vehicles or a lot of high speed traffic as they walk or bike through the city. And then building that supporting network of bike routes that are on low volume residential roads primarily, to connect to the various neighborhoods within the city and kind of get to those backbone facilities of the spur trail or the recommended enhancements on El Camino Real, and really connect up those neighborhoods to the downtown and school areas as well. Just in terms of what that looks like when we talk about low stress facilities, these are just a few examples of some separated bike lanes, how they've been implemented. I know that through the outreach process, we've heard a lot about green infrastructure and the desire to make sure that we're doing our part on that front at the same time. And so I just want to emphasize that when we have been envisioning these facilities and kind of as these get carried forward, that is to be consistent with the green infrastructure plan that the city does have, the desire to have rain gardens and be contributing to the canopy, as well as getting those facilities that are again separated from vehicle traffic on the ground. When we talk about walking, first and foremost, this is really looking for opportunities to enhance crossings for difficult to cross roadways. And so you see the list there of kind of some of the major locations that were looked at as part of the plan. Common theme there is El Camino Real, and then the US 101 ramp terminal intersections on Millbrae Avenue as well being some critical locations. In addition to that, we also heard and looked at improvements for Broadway and Meadow Glen, as well as for Park and Magnolia being some of the key drivers that we heard throughout the process. And so when we talk about these treatments, really what we're looking for, you see in the photo there of, again, providing that supportive landscaping to make this not just a safe facility to walk on, but someplace that people want to walk and feel comfortable walking. But then again, supporting that with, here we have the hybrid beacon that is stopping traffic while that pedestrian crosses, but there's also an island in the middle of the street. So if they are not able to make it during that light cycle, they would be able to safely wait there. Zooming out to the map of these improvements, again, the spur trail, it serves people biking, but it also serves people walking. But then also, as Darcy mentioned, there's the ongoing streetscape plans, looking at El Camino Real and Broadway and re-envisioning how those streets operate to not only serve and better serve people walking, to create that experience of a place and kind of encouraging that park once and walk between various different destinations within the corridor, but also creating that place where as soon as you get there walking or biking, that's some place that you can feel safe and comfortable doing so. So again, mentioned the enhanced crossings on El Camino Real and Millbrae Avenue, but then you'll see a series of orangish dots there all around the city. And really what those are crosswalk enhancements that are serving to connect trails, parks, schools, and other destinations within the city and provide kind of that additional level of awareness and safety for pedestrians when they're crossing to connect to some of those destinations. And again, so just to highlight kind of what does that look like on the ground. These are just a couple different examples of what some enhanced pedestrian crossings could be. We have on the left-hand side, Darcy showed that great picture of the spur trail with the flashing beacons and curb extensions. You can also do a median island to, again, provide that safe waiting space. And then on the right there, you'll see the crosswalk with the limited parking in the vicinity of the crosswalk to increase visibility, and then the sidewalk extending out to narrow the roadway to, again, reduce the amount of time that pedestrians are exposed to the potential conflict with the vehicle. The plan also includes a number of conceptual improvements. So these are design concepts that were put together based on the feedback that we received throughout the plan, and really focus on some of the major difficult roadways that really would need to be reimagined to better serve people walking and biking. And I'll just emphasize that these are concepts that were used to help illustrate what these improvements could look like and could be, and some of the trade-offs that would be involved with them. But any of the improvements within the plan, and especially these bigger, meatier projects, would require further study and additional outreach in order to determine the feasibility and determine the ultimate alignment of those. And then I just call attention again to El Camino Real, so State Route 82 and the US 101 interchange on Millbrae Avenue, be in locations that are under Caltrans jurisdiction. And so any improvement on those facilities would require coordination with Caltrans and moving through their project development process to get approval for any improvement made there. So just to show one of those illustrations, this is a snapshot of what concept for El Camino Real. There are a couple different options that were looked at in the plan. The one that I'm showing here is showing the protected bike lane. So you can see on the very edges of the roadway on either side where the green dashing is the bike lane that's separated it's right next to the sidewalk, and then separated from the vehicle traffic by the landscaping and parking that would be maintained. I will emphasize this concept would reallocate one through lane in each direction to maintain that parking and allow for those bike lanes. There's another concept, as I mentioned, that's in the plan that would maintain the 6 lanes, so the 3 lanes in each direction for vehicle traffic, but to have a bike lane on that with that alignment would then require the removal of parking. But what both of these concepts do provide, and the others illustrate as well, is just the opportunity for enhancing the crossings. So for both bicyclists, providing those waiting areas and the conflict area markings, so the green paint and the dash lines there to indicate where to expect bicyclists to be riding. But then again, that landscaping, giving the opportunity for rain gardens, green infrastructure to get a tree canopy established. And again, any decision around the facility is something that will be subject to further study. This was just an illustrative concept to help show what that could look like. And maybe just to help show a little bit more of what that can look like, this is recently completed green streets on Lakeside Boulevard in Oakland. And so this is, again, using that concept of there on the right side, you can see the separated bike lane. In this case, it's a 2-way bike lane where bikes are completely separate and can travel in both directions. But then also kind of the supporting trail system parallel to that, and some of the green elements that they were able to integrate into that project as well. From the supporting, so every active transportation plan is a collection of projects for capital improvements, but just as importantly is the supporting programs that are going to help make active transportation successful within the community. And so we do identify a few opportunities. We heard a few comments for some additional coordination as well for those supporting recommendations. So first and foremost, promoting walking and biking and encouraging safe walking and biking to school and transit programs through a Safe Routes to School or Safe Routes to Transit program. These are primarily educational programs that work with children or parents from schools or with people that are interested in walking or biking to the bus or getting to BART, and helping them plan their trip, understand how to walk or bike safely, and giving them some of the resources they need to feel comfortable doing so. In addition to that, bike parking, this came up in, again, some of our recent outreach, just stressing the importance of, we build out a great network. Now that I'm here with my bike, where do I park it, being something critical. So making sure that that infrastructure gets built into the way that we're thinking about any future improvements of providing the nice picture there of a bike shed, at larger, higher demand areas like downtown or the intermodal station. And then again, supporting also with wayfinding. So you're out on your bike route in your neighborhood. How do I get downtown? How do I get to the intermodal station? How do I access the spur trail? So providing, again, some of that signage as you're riding around on the network to know which way to go and about how far you have to go to get to your destination. We also want to emphasize just the importance of coordinating both with city programs. So the traffic calming program being a great support for the active transportation of helping manage speeds on city streets and coordinating those improvements to make sure that they're supporting the investments that we're making in walking and biking. But then also the coordination to the edges of the city and with the region of making sure that our plans may continue to be consistent with the planning that is occurring for walking and biking at the regional level with CCAG, with Caltrans on El Camino Real or over the interchange, and then with your neighboring jurisdictions, making sure that if their plans change, that you all are coordinating with them and are nimble and being able to adjust. So now I'll step into just summarizing some of the Planning Commission comments and what we've done to address those comments within the plan. So we did add a discussion based on some comments we received of the need to coordinate with Caltrans on the current barrier for bicycling, which actually requires bicyclists to get onto Interstate I-80 at Larkspur and ride up the ramp there and on the main line to connect up to Skyline in San Bruno. And so not just adding, it's outside of the city's jurisdiction, but it's a critical regional connection, making sure that that's something that gets addressed. We also included some subtotals and jurisdiction designations within the cost estimates to differentiate between those Caltrans related and city only projects, just to make clear which projects will require coordination with Caltrans and how much those are expected to cost versus the projects that are city only projects that could move forward without any coordination. We added some language regarding the potential connection, I should say, between the California Drive extension as part of the TOD, the Gateway TOD project at Hemlock Avenue as a really great opportunity to provide a parallel north-south route on the, excuse me, I should say the east side of El Camino Real, but that would require further study and coordination just to determine kind of what the appropriate way to make that connection would be. And then some discussion was added around the northern terminus of the spur trail. So just what happens next when you get to the very north end of the city once we extend the trail all the way. And so just making sure that we that coordination with San Bruno can happen at that connection point at Junipero Serra Park. And then in addition to that, adding some language into the report to talk about how, as the spur trail is extended, local road connections could be made to make sure that people are able to access the spur trail throughout the city. Moving on, a couple additional actions were added. So one was to just emphasize the importance of micromobility and that the city, as micromobility providers, enter into the city of just being prepared to take that on and come up with guidance to make sure that that happens in a safe and effective way. So micromobility, excuse me, is e-scooters, shared bikes, those kind of different small operators that you're seeing for kind of new ways of traveling within a city. And then green infrastructure, again, I tried to emphasize just how we've been thinking about this throughout the plan, but we did add a specific action in there just to emphasize that green infrastructure should be considered so that we're thinking about these streets, these opportunities for these projects as opportunities to invest in the greening of our environment as well within the city. We also added a discussion of the importance of improving the bike experience to and on Broadway. So we recognize that I want to emphasize that Broadway itself has a very narrow cross section. And if we want to keep everything that we have on there right now, it's very difficult to get a dedicated bicycle facility on there. But the hope is that with the streetscape plan, we're creating a slow speed environment that is going to be bicycle and pedestrian friendly and friendly for everybody to get in there and feel comfortable through that environment. And then finally, there was a question around the environmental documentation related to a creek crossing for the spur trail. And we did clarify with the environmental team that was captured and covered in the environmental documentation. So again, these comments were addressed in the revised plan that came with the packet. And the commission did vote unanimously in favor to recommend approval of the plan. A couple additional comments that I just want to bring to your attention that were not addressed, but just want to bring to your attention. So there was a request for a crosswalk on Millbrae Avenue at Valencia Drive. We did not choose to include that because of the complexity of the site itself. There isn't existing facilities around there, so the improvement would require some pretty extensive infrastructure just to be able to put a crosswalk in an accessible manner. And in addition to that, there's also some engineering concerns around site distance and grades that would need to be worked out. So that was one that we felt was best studied individually if that would be appropriate versus moving to include that within the plan. There was some comments around looking to see the rules of the road and increased enforcement of traffic safety issues. I think as Darcy mentioned at the top, we felt that that was something that was best addressed through enforcement coordination rather than including in the ATP. And similarly, there was a talk about speed management through use of infrastructure changes, navigation apps. Again, that's where we see that opportunity for great coordination between the traffic calming program, but felt that adding that into the active transportation plan was not quite the right area for that. And then finally, there was a question around adding Helen Drive improvements. So there are some crosswalk enhancements that are recommended along Helen Drive, but no bike facility because of the parallel facility just to the south. And in discussions with city staff, we felt that there would need to be some pretty significant traffic calming to create an environment where we could have a bike route on there. And so that was one, again, where we felt that it was probably best to keep that for future study if desired and keep that separate for now. So again, additional discussion is provided in attachment 7 with this to kind of show every comment that we received and the response to those comments, and to definitely encourage you to look to that for additional detail. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to Darcy to talk about implementation.
Hello, yes, thank you. So I'll just wrap it up here. So from a fiscal impact perspective, there are no fiscal impacts from council's action should you adopt this ATP. And that's just important to note because I know there's a lot of big dollar cost items that we just presented in the plan. I just want to pause there. So you're not doing anything through this action. And I'll also emphasize that the cost of the plan was fully funded through the city's general plan maintenance fund. That's a special fund that's paid for through development permits to fund efforts like this to do advanced planning documents. So that's good. And a state TDA Article 3 funded bicycle and pedestrian plan grant that we got a few years ago. So it's nice to see us finish the work from that grant. Next slide. But moving forward, there are going to be budget decisions in the future as part of your annual CIP or as grant or other funding opportunities arise mid-year. The city's public works department would come back to you and bring items forward for construction. And sometimes it starts at the design stage and that's funded. Sometimes design for these improvements can be $1 million or $2 million just to go through the design phase and then goes out to bid, as you know, with public projects. So it's a long process, but the vision for this plan is many years. It's not going to be implemented next year or 5 years. It's probably looking out 10 to 15 years to build in these great facilities. So next slide. And CEQA clearance, be remiss if I didn't have just one slide on CEQA, because there's a pretty thick document in your staff report that you might have wondered, well, what's that? Well, that's the draft initial study and mitigated negative declaration, which is a document under the state law, the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, that addresses the potential environmental effects. The good news here is it didn't require a full-blown environmental impact report. You know, there were areas that we looked at, such as biological resources, and we were able to mitigate all of those concerns. So that's good. We had a long 30-day public review period from August 2nd to September 1st, and we only received 2 comment letters from Caltrans and Sierra Club. Overall, Caltrans was supported, and I'll just pause there because they saw the concept that you saw on the slide, and they saw this this grand vision of the lane elimination. And we've since had more conversations with Caltrans, and they are open to this concept. So that's good. We're in very positive collaborative conversations with them, and we will continue to do that as we advance that concept for El Camino Real. So we made the changes to address Caltrans concerns, which were just really minor, references to other plans and reference to the state route and the correct terminology. So with that, the resolution for you tonight does make the necessary findings to support the adoption of the mitigative negative declaration and the required mitigation monitoring and reporting plan for this. Next. So in conclusion, staff recommends that Millbrae City Council adopt that mitigative negative declaration and adopt the active transportation plan, but we'll move into the questions, comments, and public comment phase next. And we're all available here tonight to answer any questions you have. And special thanks to Matt, who really did a great job. I think he was trying to steal the scene from the Dodgers Giants game, but if you snuck a peek, I hope you turned it off. I'll just say that. You get your full attention now for this item.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Broughton, and thank you, Director Smith. Question to City Council, and it's a time check. We're at 9:47. We did have a special council meeting prior to council, and it has been an emotional night with the redistricting decision. The city manager and I and Miss Smith and I talked about if all of you needed time to make suggestions and then want to see it in writing, that we could bring this back for a final vote in 2 weeks. I have some additional projects to get added, which then would have to have a cost estimate. And we could also vote on that tonight, knowing that staff might update those numbers. Where are you all? Because I know that most council, our brains start functioning as well after 10 o'clock at night. Council, do you want to keep on going till 11 to go
We're
through
only
this?
at 9 o'clock. I don't know why we're talking about this right now.
No, we're at 9:48.
But still, I mean, we're not
Okay.
near 11. Let's just go.
I'm just trying to get a feel for all of you. So I've heard from Gina. Keep going. Vice Mayor Rubin.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Let's see what
Okay.
the comments are. If they're substantive, we may need to bring it back.
Okay. All right. So who would like to go first?
Do we have public? I thought she said next thing is public comment. I'm just asking for clarification.
Well, historically, we've done council, then public comment, then back to council, but I can go to public comment.
Please.
All right. City Clerk and public, if you've got comments on this. City Clerk, do you want to, or specifically, Ms. Smith, talk about the Sierra Club's recommendations, which is taking the plan and inserting in Green Street concepts, which is a little green infrastructure, but also a little bit else on that. And they sent fresh photographs earlier today. So I guess I've just done the Sierra Club comments.
There's a speaker right now.
I do. Okay, I see Nathan Chan. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to address you and comment on this active transportation plan, which I find very exciting. Definitely, as someone who bikes and walks around Millbrae a lot of the suggested improvements are really speak to me, and I'm really excited to see this vision eventually be realized in Millbrae. There are a couple of things that I wanted to ask about. So one thing is, I don't recall there being any mention in the plan about the width of sidewalks on the east side of El Camino. It's possible it's there in some small section, but I do remember one time that I was walking just in front of the Fairfield Inn and Suites, and there was some sidewalk disruption, and someone who was in a wheelchair had actually left a note there calling out how narrow the sidewalk was to get around this traffic, this obstruction on the sidewalk. So it's definitely not the most pedestrian friendly part of Millbrae's infrastructure. I'll also echo the comment that the consultant made about the need for more bicycle parking. I will, often shop at Trader Joe's with my bicycle, and I have to hitch my bike to a sign right outside the store because there isn't much bicycle parking in the Millbrae Square area, or there's not adequate signage directing me to where the bicycle parking might be found. And then finally, I do want to talk a little bit about the length of the signals for crossing El Camino. As a bicyclist, you might not always push the pedestrian crossing signal. But I can say that crossing El Camino on either Hermosa or Murchison is pretty harrowing because there is not enough time to bike across all 6 lanes. And so I'll often be trapped in the middle of El Camino, or I'll, have to hope that the drivers won't start driving immediately when the light turns green. Or thankfully, sometimes I've remembered to push the crosswalk signal so that I can have adequate time to cross. This might be rolled into the idea of the enhanced crosswalk plans that were described in the plan, but I just wanted to make sure that that specific aspect of crossing El Camino is addressed at some point. Again, thank you for putting this plan together. Like I said, there's lots that I find very exciting about it, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Any other public members who want to comment on the active transportation plan or mitigated neg deck? I am not seeing any hands. City Clerk, anybody on the phone that I can't see? I see former Mayor Marge Colapietro. Please go ahead. You're all set, Marge. You just have to unmute. Ms. Colapietro?
Let me go ahead and help and try again. See
Okay.
if that helps.
She's still muted.
Marge, do you mind pressing *6, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
You're coming in well.
Okay, thank you. Good evening and congratulations, and what a beautiful, beautiful active transportation plan has been presented to you. And I hope you take the recommendations from the Planning Commission. Now, with that said, on October 8th that passed, Governor Newsom announced and signed into law Assembly Bill 43 that allows municipalities greater flexibility in setting speed limits. And 43 allows local authorities to consider the safety of vulnerable users when setting speed limits, something currently you're not allowed to do. It also allows municipalities to lower speed limits in certain areas which current law hampers. This gives the council an opportunity to incorporate this into the incorporated into the Millbrae Active Transportation Plan. For many, many years, our residents, and I'm sure all of you have heard complaints about speeding in our downtown areas, Broadway, Magnolia, El Camino, neighborhood streets near and around our schools, and east-west exit streets to and from 101 and 280. On behalf of our concerned community members, I request you consider moving the vote on the plan until your next regularly scheduled meeting on October 26th. That will give staff time to incorporate this public safety gift from our governor and legislators to our community and to all those traveling on our streets, be it via walking, driving, biking, and other modes, ultimately saving injuries and saving lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Colapietro. Any other comments from the public? Okay, closing public comment, bringing it back to council comments on the report. And again, Darcy is trying to keep an ongoing list based on the sections so that she can go back and edit. So the way we talked about doing it was starting right from the beginning in the first section. And Darcy, do you want to help me with the first section? I got to pull mine up from the floor.
So yes, the first section, it's pretty simple introduction with the vision and plan purpose. Then we move into context and regulatory framework and then existing conditions.
So do we have any council comments on those sections, additions, confusion, or clarification, I should say? I don't see any council comments. I didn't, of course, mark my pen pages down. Moving to the next section then.
So maybe we can jump ahead to needs.
Our plan, Darcy, it may not work. We may just have to let a council member say where their comments are and then fit it in.
Yeah, so the only thing that would help me there is if someone either references a page number or just says it's kind of throughout the plan, sprinkled throughout, that would help. But if you have a page number where you see something, give me the page number and I can record that. Or you think it's threaded throughout, just say it's in various locations. And we can obviously do a word search and try to capture it later.
Thank you.
We'll find exactly where it is.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Pappen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would really like to see this move ahead as quickly as possible here. I'd like some clarification on the El Camino plan. I believe the city manager noted, I don't want to see this go piecemeal. I think I love the diagram of having the bike lane near the sidewalk, moving the parking out and moving ahead like that. How does this work when it comes to Caltrain? Do we just provide the plan and say, hey, now we need to work with you, or what? It seems we always get stuck with plans that don't get enacted, and I would like to see this get enacted, particularly since we just received $345,000 for the Millbrae BART Caltrain Station Transit Center. I think this could be applied to in one way, shape, or form. So who can answer that for me, and how can we move ahead? Simple question, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'll take a stab at it. And if I'm wrong, Darcy, jump in, or a consultant. But I think, you know, the largest detriment or constraint to implementation is El Camino, right? It's Caltrans. And early on, we had draft plans that we would phase in an implementation strategy. And we decided, no, let's just move forward with the plan. And let's move forward with eliminating a lane in each direction to narrow El Camino, first and foremost for pedestrian safety. You know, when a pedestrian has less lanes to cross, it obviously improves the safety. And what that does with the elimination of a lane, that provides then more opportunity for improvements for a dedicated bicycle lane, wider sidewalks, streetscape design. So I think to answer your question, I think we need to move forward with implementing and working with Caltrans a lane closure in each direction so we can implement this plan. And I would recommend that with the, you know, even though we have all of the other elements citywide that will be part of, for example, in the downtown specifics and details. I think there was a question by a member of the community on how wide will the sidewalks be. Well, we'll get into that detail with our specific plan in the downtown. That will come with that planning effort. This is, as Darcy said, 60,000 foot level, which we all agree in the concept and the vision. Now we can go implement it in the specific plan. But first and foremost, I think for us, you know, as an organization, it's to get Caltrans, the state of California, to eliminate a lane in each direction so we can move forward with these improvements.
With all due respect to the city manager, I think we just complete the plan and then make the presentation. I think this is where we get caught in a glitch, an endless glitch of just asking them to do one thing and then waiting before we do something else. What I'm trying to suggest here is that Matt has presented a complete plan. Why don't we just take that plan and say, okay, here, Caltrain, now we need you to close one lane so we can do A, B, C, and D along with this.
I guess we're saying the same thing. That's exactly what my point is. Yeah.
Okay, well then I think if we can get this plan through and make, I would like to see us take active steps like that. Here is the plan, and now work with us and the political aspect of this council instead of just the staff level. And let's see if we can actually get something done in this century while we're still young. Hopefully. I would like to see that. So I applaud everybody for all their hard work on the plan. I would like to see this go ahead. I know we can tweak it more so in the future. I do understand former Mayor Colapietro's comments on the new legislation, but I think that actually is something where we have to do traffic studies and a whole bunch of different things to accommodate that. We always look at the safety of intersections and have dealt with all that throughout. But I would really like us to see move more quickly on things like this. A lot of work has already gone into this. So thank you, everybody. And like I said, if somebody could answer the final question for me, we pass this tonight, we can add to it and make adjustments later. Is that not true?
Yeah,
Okay,
more refined details on streetscape. Yeah, yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Hold on, City Manager. We're being asked to approve the mitigated negative deck. What changes to this written plan would constitute having to reopen a mitigated negative deck process? That might be
yeah, I mean, it depends on what the changes are. For example, I know, Councilmember Holliber and I discussed this earlier today, and something that's been communicated by him numerous times, and it's in the plan, and I'm going to propose that we eliminate it. It's on page 52, figure 16, which is the Chadbourne Avenue crossing at El Camino. I think that's $1.2 million in cost. It's a mid-block crossing. It actually is counter to other enhancements like the barrier that we received money from Republic Urban to put on El Camino Real. And so that is a substantive change. And I'm not speaking for the council member. I mean, I hope I'm not putting words in his mouth, but this is something I think makes a lot of sense. And I think that is one substantive change. That would not impact the mitigated negative declaration.
But the three additional projects that we have discussed at Millbrae BPAC that did not get into the plan, into the ATP, if they happened later, that would trigger a renewal of the mitigated negative deck, wouldn't it?
So, Mayor, if I'm sorry, unless I don't know what those three additional projects are.
Okay, well, then Councilman Pappen, if you can hang on to that question, it's a good question. I know Mr. Holliber, I can see him eagerly wanting to stand up. Councilman Pappen, do you have any more questions? If not, I'll move on to Mr. Holliber, and then I've got my list.
I will come back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Holliber.
I think the city attorney had a response to that about the.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Connerin.
Yeah, I can just give you a general advice. Any change to an adopted plan really needs to be considered in terms of whether or not it creates an environmental impact. Whether that actually requires you to reopen, you wouldn't really reopen, but to make a more complete CEQA analysis really depends on the change that you're proposing and what the impacts would be. But a lot of small changes can be made with just a finding by the council that it doesn't create an impact and that no additional CEQA review is needed. So I would tend to think that many of the things you're considering in terms of these smaller changes are going to be in that area. So if there's some major project, then I think we would need to look at that. But I think for most things, I would not be overly concerned in terms of it having to trigger a large CEQA effort.
Thank you. Come back to me after I give mine and tell you which ones would and which ones would not. Thank you. Councilman Holliber.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager Williams, for putting words in my mouth, but yeah, I just wanted to echo that. That caught my attention, the proposed pedestrian crossing at Chadbourne and El Camino. I think, well, first of all, it's inconsistent with past council actions. When we approved the MSASP, that was a comment that was raised, possibly a public comment at that time, and it was not included in the MSASP. And then when the development agreements for TOD1 and TOD2 were both approved, that crossing was considered again at that point. And at that point, the council's preferred option for enhancing pedestrian safety was not to put in a crossing there, but to put up the median barrier across the median of El Camino to discourage jaywalking there. So I wholeheartedly agree. I think that should be taken out of the plan. As before COVID, I frequently, nearly every day, would walk from the downtown area to the BART station and back. And I think we're perfectly content with the crossing at Victoria. And then I think if you're coming from further south, the crossing at Millbrae Avenue is sufficient as well. So I don't believe that Chadbourne crossing is particularly helpful to pedestrians, and I think could potentially increase congestion there at that spot, because it's right after the Millbrae Avenue intersection and right before the Victoria intersection. So potentially there could be 3 lights in a row if you're driving through that area that you can hit. Also, if we eventually have a second right turn lane off of Millbrae Avenue onto El Camino, which is part of the MSASP as one of the required mitigations, you would hit that light almost instantly coming out of that intersection. So my recommendation at this point and my request would be to remove that from the plan. One other comment, I'm glad you mentioned the 280 bike lane. That is, I don't think we should have a dedicated bike route along 280 from Truesdale to Millbrae Avenue. So thank you to Planning Commission for bringing that up, and also for highlighting that in the report. I think it may be worth having discussions with the city of Burlingame about how to connect that north-south route, perhaps along Vallejo Drive and into Burlingame, so that bicyclists do not have to use the 280. And then a question that I had about the spur trail. First of all, wholeheartedly support connecting the spur trail and finishing that. The question would be about the very north segment off of Lomita. There are a couple parts of that segment that are very steep and I think would be difficult to pave in terms of the grading. So in terms of finishing that route, do you at this point envision that as a paved route, or perhaps just sort of a hiking trail unpaved for that segment off of Lomita Avenue on the spur trail?
Let me see if Mr. Broughton has an answer to that off the top of his head. If not, I would say we probably need to study that more and figure out the actual slope and then what would be the most appropriate surface. We don't have that information at this point.
Yeah, just confirm that is the case, that the line that is drawn in there is illustrative of trying to make that connection versus the actual route that would necessarily be taken. As I mentioned in the presentation, any improvement that moves forward will need to go through additional engineering and design to work out those details. And there may be things that we're not seeing at this level of a vision plan that complicate things or require some changes to be made to the network that's in the plan.
Thank you for that. Like I said, I totally support completing the trail. Just that last segment we might not be able to have a paved trail, maybe a hiking path type of walking path unpaved, just based on the slope. That's all that I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hollenberg. If I can add to your discussion there, several years ago, San Bruno's Bike Pedestrian Committee invited the Millbrae committee. So Christopher Del Negro and I attended, and they have their own plans for connectivity issues through San Bruno Park and up there. I haven't seen it in years, but I think that that was part of the plan, that we would eventually connect with San Bruno for a more rural, more of a spur trail. But the other trail, one on my list of things that are missing, is something else that Christopher Del Negro has brought up when he was on BPAC, now on planning, is the top of Helen Drive as it connects into the backside of Yunipesera Park. Having grown up right up there, we got into the park all the time up there. It's another opportunity. And Darcy, what's the term that I have to learn how to use? Needs more study? Is that it? Not
Yes,
needs to be
yes.
investigated?
Yeah, needs further study.
So on the next set of maps that will come in the final report, there's a number of trails that are going to be marked needs more study on that. So with that, let me go into the ones that Darcy and I talked about earlier today that have come from Millbrae BPAC and discussions from community enhancement. The first one is a bike pedestrian overpass all of the railroad tracks north of the existing train station, because with the trains, it makes that pedestrian passage between Monterey Road and Hemlock very dangerous. So it had long been in our plans to get an overpass over there. And who knows, if high-speed rail comes, maybe high-speed rail should be forced to pay for something like that. And it'll connect both Bayside Manor and the new TOD2, the Gateway Project, the people living there, over to the west side and up into Broadway. So Darcy, that's that one that I mentioned to you, north of the intermodal station. And then I also mentioned that right now, the one shoreline is working, currently they're working on, it's called San Bruno Station. It's where San Bruno Creek empties into the wetlands that flow behind both of our cities. And their staff would like to have San Bruno and Millbrae meet and talk about a long-term plan for the wetlands that can include trail connectivity issues. Darcy and I talked about that earlier, about right now, it's a need to be studied. It's not anything for right now, but it'll hopefully, if council will agree to that addition, it'll just be on another map on a need to be studied. It would also have the kind of really cool ability to connect Bayside Manor and Marina Vista Parks and Lomita Park School into a nice little trail system that has no cars on it. The other thing that we talked about in terms of the plan, which I don't think triggers, the one thing I think that might trigger the negative deck is, or a mitigation, is the bike pedestrian overpass the railroad tracks. Mr. Connerin, but you can correct me, please. The other ones are just kind of additions to the actual plan, and that's more examples of green streets, bioswales, safer bike walking. Darcy added them to the presentation tonight. They weren't originally in the plan, so inserting more graphics into the plan, making it easier to understand. There is a discussion that's very preliminary on recovering Mills Creek, and then Highline Creek, Cohen Canal, Highline Canal, and Lomita Canal back to their natural state, creating more pedestrian experiences, as well as working on sea level rise. And from Supervisor Pine, when I ran these ideas past him, they are currently working on a sea level rise project in South San Francisco that involves taking a cemented creek and turning it back into a natural creek with access for people to then enjoy this new natural environment. So that's the trails. The other thing that I've got to try to get you a picture, I attended the Bay Estuary Conference 2 weeks ago. California Air Resources Board is working on a project with Oakland to create a different kind of overpass, a bike pedestrian pass that also incorporates greenery. And it's a way of creating a green link from the homes on the east side of 880 over to the wetlands. So they had some terrific graphics. This is the direction CARB would like to go, and their funding directions for potentially our bike pedestrian overpass 101. So I wanted, if with your permission, council, get that photograph or that drawing in there from CARB so that we can envision it and we can plan for it. Both of those may trigger additional cost estimates. Do we have the BPAC trail over 101 cost estimate that went from 12 million to 15 million? I don't think it's in there.
No.
And it,
So when we met with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Subcommittee in late
August,
some of the items you mentioned, they did not bring up, but we've had some new members. So their comments that they made are summarized in attachment 7, and we responded to the ones that we could in the plan, as we've noted there.
as I said, a lot of these are when Commissioner Del Negro, then Park and Rec Commissioner Del Negro, and I would talk about what to get into the county plan, because I'm on the county BPAC. So that's why this conversation doesn't necessarily get directly to staff. And I have a conflict with Millbrae BPAC meetings now. So those are my main ones. The other one that I brought up, when we're talking about walking in the neighborhoods, at least in the Highlands neighborhood with street trees, we have a lot of uneven sidewalk. Now, most of us would just step over it, but I have been taking my 94-year-old mom who uses a walker, and even a half an inch difference between 2 levels of sidewalk can cause her walker to do a dead stop. And in terms of a funding mechanism, the city manager and I've talked about neighborhood improvement districts, or just the pilot that the city did last year to take out one contract and the residents pay in for sidewalk repairs. It will make walking in many of our neighborhoods safer. Right now, the only safe place for me to take a 94-year-old is the asphalt at Central Park, which is 5 houses away. But that's the other addition I would put somewhere in the plan, that uneven sidewalk can be very dangerous to people with walkers, not kids, little ones, same thing, a little trip, down they go on that. So things that we forget when we're not walking impaired on that. So those are and the other addition that comes at every bike pedestrian meeting when I was attending is great concerns trying to cross the street at Chadbourne and Magnolia and Millbrae Avenue in Magnolia. And I didn't see those on the list. Whether it's left turns or right turns, people walking, turning into people. We get somebody that comes to almost every MCAC meeting and almost every Millbrae BPAC meeting complaining about those 2 intersections, commenting about those 2 intersections as something to look at. So that's what I'd like to see in the plan to be able to vote on it. And then earlier today, Darcy and I talked about the historical, adding some bullet points within the plan, just recognizing the historical trail system, the historical significance of the discovery of San Francisco Bay by Europeans, little things like that can easily be changed, or I think they can be easily changed with the permission of the rest of council if you want to vote on this tonight. So that's where I'm at.
Madam Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
I think we are exceeding the concept here with the.
I disagree. I disagree.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, I am talking right now, okay?
Yeah.
Ask for our comments here, okay? I think we are exceeding with the historical, and with the sidewalk, it is related to the residents. And I think we as a council can propose that outside this plan. I'm not sure this plan is the appropriate way to do that. So I would really like to see this move forward. Council member Oliver's made some comments here. You have made some other ones that I think we can do without getting, we can do what you said as the further study. But I think we're getting a little off track, and it may delay things further that I don't think we.
To be honest, Councilwoman, this isn't going to affect the money that you got from MTC or the money that will be voted on by CCAG on Thursday. This is a plan, and if we don't get these things in the plan and we apply for a grant, we cannot cite back to the pages within our plan. So I strongly disagree with you.
Well,
this is what we do at CCAG BPAC.
I would like some clarification from Matt and Darcy about those 2 elements here. And if we have clear direction that came from BPAC, I mean, I'm not quite understanding if BPAC has voted on some of this stuff, then I think Darcy said what they did comment on was part of the plan and is part of the plan. So if staff could clarify that, hopefully we can move ahead.
And with respect, I am also BPAC. I am CCAG BPAC and have been living with these plans for 6 years. I would like some respect 2, the current Millbrae BPAC does not have Chris Del Negro, who is the bicycle specialist. None of them are pedestrian specialists. There is nothing in this plan that helps someone who is blind or mobility disabled in here. My recommendations are, and if we want to get money for that on a quick build project, it needs to be in the ATP or in our bike pedestrian plan, which the ATP is.
And I've asked Matt and Darcy if you could clarify that for the mayor and I, that would be helpful.
Okay, I'll take a stab at that. Some of the comments, I think, require a little bit more analysis if they're new trails. And that's why we could add them to a list of things to study in more detail, understudy. Some of them are not within city-owned property, for example. So within property owned by other agencies, potentially we'd need to study that more. So we could add follow-up items to study more. There was a future overpass, a potential future trail on Mills Creek. Need to confirm the exact name of that creek. Potential future trail on east side of Bay connecting Bayside Park to Marina Vista Park. Those require just a little bit more analysis. We couldn't add them and bring them back in 2 weeks because especially as those new trails can have CEQA impacts if they're brand new trails. But we could add them as areas of future study, which would then mean, you know, if we really want to move forward with those, we need to do more analysis. That's how we could approach it. Not dramatically changing the plan, but adding items that we'd like to consider in more detail when the opportunity arises in the future. I mean, we have a lot to do in the plan already. I think what we would want to hear from next to some extent is through the CIP process, you know, what are the projects the city wants at the top of the list? So more prioritization. That's not for tonight or when we come back, but that's sort of the next thing is what are the highest priorities for the council that we can then, you know, work on funding. Many of these are multi-year projects, right? And we have a great shared use path under construction right now at along Aviador, and that took many years to put together and piece together different funding. So I think we could add some of these things. They're pretty simple. Those three potential bigger items that we just need to study more. So they would be pretty big chunks. Removing something from the plan, such as removing the pedestrian crossing El Camino Real and Chaborn, that's easy, right? Can take things out. But at this stage, adding a lot more and that's really studied would be tough, but we can add those to the list of items to study more in the future. That's kind of my recommendation.
Thank you.
So I have a couple more then. On page 45, you list a number of very narrow streets as a low stress bike route. One of them happens to be my street, so full declaration, Palm Avenue. We have cyclists coming up and down and it's lovely. However, if you're thinking of painting green paint on it, when our cars are hit all the time by people trying to pass, cars going either direction on Palm or Poplar, I'm sure Palm Avenue is chosen because of Central Park. And I believe at the BPAC meeting in August, they talked about a commuter trail that would come up Millbrae Avenue, make a right on Palm, then cruise through the park at the speed that a road bike would cruise at and connect up to Helen Drive. I'm not sure that that's safe. And maybe that's better addressed in the circulation plan and the traffic calming work, in which case former Mayor Cola Pietro's AB 48, 43, or if I wrote it down, that's lovely news. I would rather see it in this plan, but if I don't have 3 votes, it's going to pass tonight, in which case it could come back in the general plan, giving staff more time to study that. We have many neighborhoods that would like to go to 15 miles per hour without having to do the traffic study, which would not allow them in the old days to go to 15 miles an hour, including, I think, most of Helen Drive, from the comments I get from people on Helen Drive. So what does it really mean by having low stress bike routes The biggest complaint I hear from people on Aviador is how narrow the street is, how many cars. When you open up the door zone on a bicycle, there's hardly any road left to ride on because the door zone on either side will take up most of the street.
So Matt can explain the low stress bike facility, but I'll just emphasize that the Palm facility is a potential one. So we're not going to change anything as a result of this plan immediately. Again, if the city council wish to prioritize through the CIP, the installation of that low stress bike route, for example, on Palm or another street, then there needs to be more study of how exactly the pavement markings would change, how you would address, the parking on the street, signage, et cetera. And that would be an implementation item that would go through Public Works, come back to you for design and funding, and then proceed through the construction process.
Okay.
So nothing, you're not making any decisions tonight about building anything. Nothing will, which is unfortunate, but this is what a master conceptual plan does. If there were to be improvements made, we need to study them further, show you exactly how that's going to be implemented, and then that would come back to you. But
Okay,
Matt can give you a quick feedback on what a low stress bike route sounds great. I want to ride it. I'll tell you that, because I find biking to be a bit stressful. But so the low stress sounds fun, but I think it's low speed streets that are residential streets, right? That carry probably shared lane markings.
Yeah, exactly. We're looking for opportunities where roads have, relatively speaking, low volumes of traffic and lower travel speeds. So actually narrow streets can help support that by creating friction for vehicles don't feel comfortable traveling at high speed on those roads. I would say with any improvement that we would make, I think, as I kind of tried to hit on a little bit in the presentation, it would be incumbent as part of that project to
I would
sure
love
that-
to invite you both to come to Palm Avenue, Poplar, or Ashton during the morning school, afternoon, and evening commute. We are not low speed and we are not low traffic. We are cut through streets, and it's scary. None of us get in and out of our cars on these streets without taking our lives in our hand, because people will pass within inches of us trying to get out of our cars. And that's not the cyclists. I mean, the cyclists are pretty cool. It's the drivers who cut through us. And many of them probably do not live in Millbrae. They cut between the freeways. And that would have been my overall comment on some of this. It doesn't seem to take in the realistic. People don't not ride their bikes because we're hilly. It's because we have scary drivers here. And it is not safe because of how fast the drivers drive. So Councilwoman or former Mayor Colapietro's comment about the new law is really good news. I would think that would be a lot of really good news for Millbrae. So with that, I understand what you're saying, Director Smith, that this is just putting it on the list. Hence my reason for saying the list for the bike ped overpass over the railroad tracks. So there's better connectivity for the neighborhoods on the east side of the railroad tracks. If I can't get that one in, it's just a loss tonight.
Well,
So with that,
think-
I see the vice mayor's hand up. So then the
Yeah,
vice
Mayor,
mayor.
real quick on that Monterey connection. I think as Darcy said, that further studies required because there's right of way, Caltrain right of way that we can continue down and actually connect with Hillcrest. And that I think would be a much cheaper, cost-effective way to get that connection instead of an overcrossing over the tracks.
That's true.
So
true.
something that we can,
I agree.
we put on the list, we study it, and then, determine what our transit partners can do for us.
Okay.
Because that would make a lot of sense to make that
To be
connection
honest,
at Hillcrest, actually.
We actually, if you were to talk to then Park and Rec Bike Pedestrian Commissioner Del Negro and I, we had a bike trail on either side of the railroad tracks. So you wouldn't have to cross back over at Center Street and then cross over. If you're a commuter and you want to get there as quickly as possible, that makes great sense. All right, Vice Mayor Oliva.
Is it possible? Thank you for all the comments. I think that my briefing on this was a little bit different, or my interpretation of it was, this is at a very high level. And I think if I'm understanding this correctly, I'd like to take it in the direction as Councilman Pappen has put it. Let's move this along. So we can take details and iron them out, and we do need to make it correct. And all these details going forward are very important. Yet for tonight, I'd like to see if we can call for a vote here and pass this.
I understand. I just want you all to understand that I give points to the bike pedestrian grants, and Millbrae loses points every time in the past because we didn't have a particular project listed in our planning document. So what gets into a planning document is really important and gives you extra points.
I understand.
And it's so frustrating to have Millbrae lose year after year after years. And this is part of us being smarter and putting ourselves in a position to get this funding. So I hear what you're saying. I talked to the city manager. I didn't like the process, that we're basically getting a done deal without really being able to dive into it. And I listened to Planning Commission and I listened to the BPAC meeting, but this is not the way I would have liked to have reviewed a plan at the very last minute, but I understand. Let's pass the damn thing.
It's not a damn thing. I'm very respectful of Darcy and your team. Darcy, Matt, I think this has been presented very well and it's been quite an education. And I'm excited that it got dug out of the closet. And with that, I'm making a motion to pass this tonight.
Okay, motion by Vice Mayor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Fung. Further discussion?
Yes, I'd like to add the items we suggested to study, to be clear.
That was part of the motion. That was clear with Darcy saying she was going to take that back for our priority seeking in the future.
Is that correct, Darcy? Okay, great.
Would you like to see the slide with the?
No, that's fine. As long as, everybody's being heard here and we are adding these in.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then does that also include what Councilmember Holliber suggested the removal of?
Yes, that's part of my motion. I thought that was agreed upon. Yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
I would add also that high-speed rail wants that connection at Chadbourne, and it's in their planning doc. So I very much want it out.
Yeah, and I'll go on the record to say High Speed Rail has no authority to put that in that plan. I mean, that is outside of their purview, and this is absolutely a local jurisdictional call.
Thank you, City Manager.
Did I get a second?
Even a domain the entire city.
Call for the question.
Did I get a second? Oh, Fung, thank you.
Okay, City Clerk, if there's no further comment, City Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilmember Holliber.
Aye.
Councilmember Fung.
Aye.
Councilmember Pappen.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Leva.
Aye.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes, with a note that I dislike approving a plan that isn't in its real final form.
Okay.
It's just not my training in working on environmental docs, but yes, but I want that noted.
Yeah, and I'll note that the specific plan should have never been passed either, but let's go.
Okay.
The City Council, sorry.
No, go ahead, City Clerk.
Please. The City Council adopted the mitigated negative declaration and adopt the City of Millbrae active transportation plan by the vote of 5-0.
Thank you, City Clerk. Okay, it is 10:34. We had a shortened council comments, but if there are some important meetings coming up, let's please start with Councilman Fung. Anything that you want to report out?
Not too much. I mean, attended the youth advisory committee, and they're still working on the work plan. We'll bring it back for the next council meeting for more detail. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Fung. Councilwoman Pappen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As noted, Millbrae received $345,150 from MTC OBAG 2 regional programming for BART Caltrain Station Center, which we hope to work with staff on and the transit operators for once. In addition to that, Millbrae also received some additional money from CMAC for another program throughout the city. So funding is coming in and things appear to be going well. It also appears that the spirits store in Millbrae seems to be doing a booming business. So that's nice. Hopefully we can pick up a little revenue there. And I believe I can't remember, we did lose another resident and now I'm at a loss here, but if I think of it, I will let you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Pappen. Councilman Holober.
Hey, thank you. Not too much to report. I think the Sister Cities Commission was unable to have a quorum at the last meeting. It was canceled. The Parks and Recreation Commission discussed rental fees for the new recreation center for the various rooms. I'm glad to see that moving forward. There's also going to be a sign installed at the Seroptimus Park, Josephine Wallace Seroptimus Park, regarding the lawn. Apparently the lawn that has been installed uses about 90% less water than a typical, I guess, bluegrass lawn is the typical type. So there's going to be a sign discussing that and showing how, yeah, it is possible to have a nice green lawn that is pretty drought tolerant, and hopefully promote that within Millbrae. Also, used the fitness court yesterday. I highly recommend it. Always seemed whenever I go by that area, it's always in use and seems to be getting good use. Gotten a lot of positive feedback about that. So glad to see that seems to be a success. We had a nice ribbon cutting for that a couple of weeks ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Holober. Vice Mayor Oliva.
Two quick things. First, thank you for the Japanese Cultural Festival. Kathleen Kimura and her committee did a wonderful job. Really appreciate that and looked forward to it. Got there a little bit too early for the rest of you guys. But I did get to put my 2 cents in there, and I always look forward to that. Secondly, and if our city manager wants to comment any more on this, just one more kudos to our supervisors for passing the resolution so that we are getting $100,000 in Measure K funds to go towards Life Moves project down on the BART area transit station for our transient homeless population that's coming to Millbrae. So thank you to Supervisor Pine and his efforts and his team, and Life Moves and their efforts and their team, and Millbrae staff did a wonderful job. And I think we have an opportunity to do something really nice here in Millbrae. And I hope that our manager is correct in saying that we might be able to put this across a lot of transit stations across the country with our model idea. So thank you, staff, for helping out with that. It was amazing.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and congratulations. I know this is near and dear to you. Okay, both the Millbrae Community Enhancement Advisory Committee and the Cultural Arts Committee are working on their work plans. I assume that our other committees are also working on their work plans for 2022, and they will be coming to council over the next couple of months. The city manager has been working on a new format, hopefully that provides more guidance on there. So you might see them in your liaison responsibilities for that. The city manager can go into more detail if you're curious, because I haven't actually seen what the format looks like. The CCAG BPAC, they're on a 2-year grant funding cycle. The grant has been released. It is due, I think, in November, and we will be reviewing the grant submittals in December to go to CCAG in January, or BPAC and then CCAG in January. That's our one chance of getting funds over a 2-year period. So, and it's been a number of years for that. At our last BPAC, the city gave, Andrew gave a great update on our completed grant, which is the Spur Trail grant. This is something new that BPAC is now requiring all grant recipients to report on how they're doing, and if they're not going to make their funding levels or their funding deadlines than to bring it up earlier rather than later. And that brings me to the money that Redwood City couldn't spend in time. That is another $350,000 to the city of Millbrae. We didn't have quorum at BPAC in September, so it's going straight to CCAG on Thursday. So staff, pay attention, because if we do get that money, we have to complete the work in a little over 18 months, because this is really a grant from 4 years ago that Redwood City could not get all the funding put together to get an overpass built on that. My statewide recycling commission, I haven't spoken much, but at least 7 of our recommended bills have been signed into law. One of them will take a few years to roll out, but no longer will manufacturers be allowed to put on a recycling symbol for a product that is not truly recyclable in 75% of the population in the state of California. This will also impact all curbside programs, along with a new law going into effect, an international law, trading law, that goes into effect in January, that we cannot ship plastics overseas if they are not truly being recycled. So we're going to begin to see some big changes in our recycling programs, as well as SB 1383, the horribly named short-term pollutant, but really the organics out of landfill law. And that law, that ordinance, Millbrae's ordinance, will be coming to us in our next October meeting. So that has been taking up a huge amount of staff's time working on this fairly complicated ordinance. It's clean energy, off-submerged services. I think that's probably enough for now. I think I already mentioned earlier that Landing Lane, our one neighborhood that has a tendency to flood almost every year, improved by SFO cleaning their culverts of reeds more frequently. But we met with sea level rise people. The city manager couldn't get in, his Zoom wouldn't let him in that day, but they have a request. So sea level rise staff and the staff person that specifically works in Millbrae and San Bruno to meet with both city managers, both mayors, and walk the area behind Landing Lane and look at the plans for the 2 cities to prevent flooding of any of our neighborhoods on the east side. And then finally, SFO roundtable last week, they are still debating or discussing adding Palo Alto. Our Congresswoman has written a letter saying she doesn't support adding other cities, that we should be concentrating on our existing noise. And San Francisco made an unusual comment for them. They are adamantly opposed to the plan San Bruno has for Tanforan. They're very concerned that housing will go in there, and that's under the extremely noisy gap departure. So they never really came out and complained about our biotech, but they came out formally saying, please don't redo Tanforan. So San Francisco is beginning to also stand up for itself. And there we go. With that, Councilwoman Pappen, I do remember seeing someone from Millbrae, and I don't want to say their name, one of our Italian families, but we can bring it back the next time. With that, thank you to staff.
So yes, I remembered. If we could please close in honor of Mr. Cullinane. Tom Cullinane passed away, longtime Millbrae resident, and to his family, his children. Thank you very much. I'd appreciate that.
Thank you. So with that, thank you to staff and everyone tonight. And let's close in, please, I don't have his name in front of me. Mr. Cullinane?
Yes, Mr. Cullinane.
Okay, thank you. City Clerk? Closing.
Okay, we're closing in honor of Mr. Cullinane, and did you?
Cullinane.
I'll send you the spelling, Tom.
That'd be great. Thank you, Councilmember Gina Pappen. So, Mayor, would you like us to do anything else?
Oh, just closing at 10:44. Thank you all. See you in a couple of weeks.
All right, meeting adjourned at 11:44.